Hello and welcome in, everybody, to the SMITE Pro League. So glad to have you along with us on whatever days of the week don't exist anymore. Nothing is real. Time is just a construct. But the SPL is here and ready to go. Aggro joined by Mifflin. And Miff, we've got a really good day ahead of us. Two what should be very, very competitive matches today. eUnited PK going to kick us off, and then Space Station Gaming up against Rival.
eUnited PK is a set I'm excruciatingly excited for. I mean, eUnited have to get adjusted to genetics coming on board. He's going to be playing on European ping and playing against a PK that has had a pretty okay turbulent start. Last loss to Sanguine, but still a team that's been able to perform at a very high level. I think this is going to be a really exciting set.
Yeah, I just feel like you never know exactly what you're going to get from eUnited or Pittsburgh Knights. You could get the eUnited that's making great Fire Giant plays and great macro plays and are creative with their drafts, or you get the United that just doesn't seem to mesh it all together and the drafts get a little bit wonky. You get the PK that absolutely stomps you out early game and just steamrolls you or out team fights you late, or you can get the PK that feels like they never got out of bed that morning. And I think their records reflect that. 3-3 for eUnited, 2-4 for the defending world champion Pittsburgh Knights. But I think the narrative around eUnited probably changes a good amount if they find a win today. That would put them above 500 at 4-3. They'd be solidly in that top half of the league, but they've got a pretty tough task if they want to do it today.
They really do. I mean, Zapman's having a fantastic season. Neil has been the staple of consistency out of that support role. There's a lot that they have to work through. PK might come out swinging with some new strategies today as well. They really do need this win considering the standings, as you said, 2-4. But they've looked good in all of their losses, and that's not something you could say about every single team, and it's not something you could say forever about PK. Eventually, you're going to need to start winning a little bit more consistently, but there's certainly no – what's the word I'm looking for? Just do-over? No. Weakling?
Yeah,
it's not like, there we go.
They're not a pushover. Yeah, I mean, they're the defending world champions, and this is the same issue that plagued them last year, where they would have these sets where they look fantastic, and they have these sets where they don't really do a whole lot. They don't look bad, but they just don't ever get the ball rolling. And I think that finding that way to kind of change that for that team is going to be key. But I want to stick with eUnited because this is a team, as you mentioned, trying to get used to having genetics there, and I was going with where I was going. Variety has been the most consistent member of this team for me by a country mile. This guy, I think, has looked like one of, if not the best solo laners in the league so far this year.
He really has. It's an aggressive play style. He rotates out a lane a lot earlier than we see from the majority of the top-tier solo laners. He's a very active member of the team, and he can be a player to play through. Variety has been hailed as one of the greatest of all time, and I think he's definitely earned that title.
Well, we had a chance to sit down and talk to him a little bit earlier on. Let's take a listen and hear from Variety.
All right, well, I am here with Variety, solo laner for eUnited. At Variety, the first thing I want to ask you, man, is just how is the team kind of meshing and feeling after this roster change has now kind of had a chance to settle?
We've meshed really well, actually, especially Snoopy and Genetics. Them both, they've been great in lane and scrims. You know, the communication's there with them. And for me personally, I don't really get to impact the team that much since I'm in the solo lane and everything happens in dual lane. So, yeah, we've been playing well.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, I was just looking over the stats, trying to see if you all had any outliers. You do all have the second most Fire Giants in the league. I don't know if that means anything or nothing, but do you think there's been more concerted effort to play around those late game objectives?
I would say so for sure. Yeah, I think our team comps are a lot better at doing Fire Giant, and I also think that the shot calling from Genetics has been like, you know, that's what we wanted from him, and that's what we're getting. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that so far he's living up to it. I would say so, too, from what I've seen. What about your matchup up against Scary D? Because I think he might look like the best player on the Knights right now. He's played really well, and he's rotated out of the solo lane a lot. What do you do to try and match this guy's value when you're laning up against
him? Scary D? Yeah, I'd say he's definitely the most consistent player on PK right now because they've had a rough start to the season, which is kind of what I expected, honestly, because of last year they finished, even though they won World, obviously, and they got Qvo, who's an absolute beast, they finished 7th in the regular season, so.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think in general, it's just go even at the very least in lane, if not win, and then I can probably out-rotate him myself.
Well,
Or
how
at
much
least
does that
master
stuff
rotation.
change, like matchup to matchup? Because I feel like, there's not always a ton of fighting over there. Does a lot change for you based on who you're playing? Or is it more about the picks that you end up with or what your draft wants to do that game?
It's mostly down to picks, honestly, because some solo laners are just really good at proxying the waves, like Terra, Vamana, people who can't, who are hard to gank while proxying. So they can obviously just run around the map, especially with the new tier build that people are doing. You can run around the map and impact it a lot more from solo. Or other gods like Sobek, for example, where his clear is just terrible until like level 8 or 9. You kind of have to just sit in lane and wait for the late game and just do your job there.
All right, well, thanks for taking some time to talk to us, Variety. I appreciate always a chance to hear from you, and good luck in your match coming up.
Thank you.
I know Variety was mentioning QvoFred there, and I didn't even realize until right now that is a matchup of players that have been teammates up until this year for a couple years before this point. Miff, I mean, you're going up against a former solo laner of yours. Let's say you're loading up against DeWorst back in the day. Are you camping his lane? Are you trying to set him behind? How much of an advantage do you think that gives Fred?
It gives Fred a slight advantage just because Fred's playing out of the jungle role and get involved around the map a lot more. And there is a certain level of drive because playing against your former teammates. There's no worse feeling in the world, I can tell you that. I think I lost to Matt Coys exactly once, and he had replaced me on a team before, and immediately he sends like 3 DMs to my team captain like, haha, loser, you replaced the wrong guy or something like that. And I had never felt worse about a loss in my life ever. So maybe Qvo's got a little bit of that energy going with them.
Yeah, who knows? I think that it might be a little bit more cordial than look, man, console was cutthroat back in the day. The PC guys maybe a little bit more higher, a little bit higher echelon in terms of class sometimes. But that's why that's why I miss console sometimes, man. A lot of the fun comes from getting down and dirty, and maybe that's what PK needs to do, because they've had games where maybe they don't feel like they get their hands dirty enough. Do you feel like this team doesn't just take the fights early enough for your liking? What do you think has been the main root of PK's inconsistency?
PK has been a very good early game team in my eyes. If they get off to a good start, they have the Grime Lord himself, Zapman, able to jump in at level 1 and continue to do so for the next 40 minutes. But when they don't get off to that really good start and they start to flounder in the mid game, if they go into it even, that's where we see PK really start to struggle. They don't really know how to confirm an objective from even. They usually start it up. Maybe they confirm it themselves and then immediately lose a fight off the back end of it. So I think as long as we keep an eye on whether or not they win the early game, it's a completely different narrative. But if they go into mid at even, that's where you really have to watch how they play around this Gold Fury, how they play around Pyromancer, how that 3v3 plays out in mid.
Well, let's see what happens in the draft, as that is usually where a lot of these games can get swung, whether winning yourself the game because of the draft or potentially putting yourself behind the 8-ball. And PK in that first pick slot, we've seen Scary D get Camazotz an awful lot. Obviously, him versus Variety is going to be a big talking point in this set. And we've seen a lot of teams prioritize safe solo laners, a lot of Sobek, a lot of Jormungandr, things like that. Variety wants to play the Sobek if it's given to him, but for the most part, I don't see either of these guys necessarily picking Jorm. It feels like a little bit more of an aggressive, King Arthur, Osiris sort of solo lane matchup to me.
Yeah, both players have been completely aggressive out of that lane. And we heard it in the interview. Variety said, well, I might not, solo him out. I might not win the lane outright. But he was confident about one thing exactly, and it was his ability to rotate out and get impactful before Scary D or Belair would. That's huge, and that's probably why United really do play around these early objectives. That's why they have the most Gold Furies confirmed of any team. It's because they are constantly looking for the opportunity to pull ahead purely off of that. They play for the objective. They're not playing as individual players. They're not playing to put a certain person ahead. They're really playing for the group as a whole.
Well, PK bans the Thor away right away, and we've seen Thor kind of sneak through picks and bans a little bit as of late, but his win rate is still through the roof. And PK does not want Scream to get a hold of that. Whereas eUnited, doing what a lot of teams do up against PK, and that's ban away gods that Paul likes to play. Hell and Merlin already off the table here for eUnited. Those are also two gods that Hurriwind plays quite well, but usually priority goes to taking gods away from Paul, which makes me think maybe something like Hebo could be banned away here if eUnited want to keep with that same trend. But Camazotz is still open. Odin, though Odin has not been as prioritized as of late, and Ullr, which is coincidentally also a Paul god, even though Zapman plays it from time to time in that long lane. So now PK has the option, Camazotz is open, and if you're going to, and Scary has really been given that pretty consistently so far this year, this first pick would not surprise me.
That's exactly what you're afforded when you have this lightning rod of a player in Paul who's really played through a lot by PK. They have these signature gods. I mean, Paul Bow, Paul Hell, Paul Lin, Merlin, I don't know. He's got these gods that are really reminiscent of his name. They are associated with him.
Yeah, but here's how it goes, okay? It's like you put P in front of the god name. You know, it's Pel, not Hell. It's Pooler, not Ullr. No, you don't put the whole name, man. You gotta just put the letter first, okay? Like Zanhur for Zapman, it's just the Z beforehand. We'll work on it. You know, you're new. You're still getting used to it. As Ho Yi and that Sobek comes through. Now, when eUnited had Ionic in that support role, they would flex this Sobek quite a bit. But we don't know if that's still going to be the case for Genetics, who loves that Horus pick that PK already banned away. So this is a potential flex pick here for eUnited. But I don't know if you agree with this, Myth, but I feel like Sobek in solo is a little bit more impactful.
It depends on who you're laning with. If you have a Cupid in your lane or an Anhur, that Sobek can get huge pressure out of lane in the long as a support very well. You want to set up for that aggressive hunter. With Hu Yi, there's a similar situation, but I agree that by and large, Sobek out of the soul lane is one of the best places to put him, just because he's a god that's looking to farm for late, become one of the tankiest guardians possible, and be a fantastic initiation or backline peel tool for the team fight, where you can still open up a team with an aggressive support, maybe a warrior out of that long lane like Odin or even a Horus, but that's banned out. So I agree with you in that. I think it really is going to go to variety.
Yeah, I think that's likely where it is. And with that Terra locked in, now we know for sure where that Sobek is going to go, because Genetics loves this Terra selection. And look, he struggled a little bit in his first few weeks, I think, in being accurate with his CC. On Terra, you don't have to worry about that too much, right? You just gotta press 4 when you're in the middle of the entire team fight, and you're gonna be chilling no matter what.
So let me get this right. Zanhur got picked up by PK. Yep, I got that. Cool.
Yeah, nice.
So that fits his playstyle. Zapman's going to be looking to get aggressive. He's playing against a god that is going to be looking to fight into him constantly. Normally when you see this happen, the enemy ADC will pick something a little bit more passive. So if someone takes Anhur, we'll usually see a Jingwei come out or a Hachiman a little bit safer. But both ADCs are looking to be a little bit more scrappy. Hu Yi versus Anhur in that long lane, which kind of tells me that we're going to see a little bit of a jungle focus over there. Maybe get some early gold furies for whichever squad pulls ahead.
Hunbats and Odin banned away, 2 big control gods by eUnited. So now PK, and their draft is lacking some degree of control so far. When you think about QvoFred gods that are still open, Cabrakan comes to mind, Serket comes to mind as 2 that are pretty heavy CC and would fit this draft pretty well, as PK ban away a couple mages that are actually aimed at Scream, I would guess, with Hebo and Poseidon. He's really jungled those 2 quite a bit so far this year, and eUnited's been pretty willing to go to double hunter, and I think this is really smart actually by PK. eUnited already has 2 guardians, and the 2 guardian 2 hunter setup has been very, very popular and competitive for a long time. I think it's pretty heads up to ban away a couple of Screams mages in the jungle.
And maybe that's why we see that Janus pick up immediately. I'm not the biggest proponent of Janus jungle, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that's going into the mid for them. But it's not the best facilitator for the team comp that they have right now. You're really looking to move your team around the map, find some backline dives. But with Terra and Hu Yi, those are gods that are going to be looking to get their picks in the middle of a team fight. And usually with a Terra, you want someone with some sort of AoE magical damage to really get the most out of Terra's ultimate. Janus, a little bit of a confusing pickup, but it's going to be incredibly safe against this dive-heavy PK comp.
Surprised at the Pele, though, instead of Susano. Susano usually the de facto counterpick to Janus. I think it matches up pretty well against everything else that United has, save for the Terra. A little bit surprised to see Qvo go for the Pele, but still dives very well, as you mentioned, which is the real key. Artio there for NeilMah. Great cripple available to him, which is great up against, well, everybody on eUnited. And hello, what is this? Nike is popping into the equation, and if you haven't been watching streams, Nike Jungle has been taking over the high-level ranked scene. Myth, have you gotten the pleasure of getting ran down by the Nike Jungle yet? What do you think of it?
I think that Nike is one of the best late game characters, which is, pretty obvious to say. As the game goes on, she gets her passive online to boost the entirety of her team. I like what eUnited's doing. They have a late game centric comp. This Sobek's going to be looking to farm to level 20. This Janus is going to really pop off once he gets his full CDR and pen online. Might as well pick a god that's going to bring the strengths out of each one of your characters and make it easier to engage and deal massive damage.
Well, let's see what happens. Game number 1, Nike Jungle debut in the SPL. Let's throw it to the casters.
Thanks, Aggro and Mifflin on the desk. Finch and Goremizer here on the call. As we move to game number 1 between the Knights and eUnited, and we will indeed be starting with Scream piloting this Nike Jungle. And you already heard Aggro talk a bit about how aggressive it can be. I don't even know how much time we're going to spend on that per se, because there's so much aggression on the left-hand side of the map here, Goremizer. An aggressive position for the Pittsburgh Knights as they look to try and take this invade the best that they can. Can't quite find it, though, as NeilMah, so he'll back up.
Well, it's very much in line with what the desk was saying, right? I mean, this is a dive-heavy comp, and you expect them to try and go deep and look for those pickups. Didn't know if I was expecting anything big out of a purple buff, but I like to see that Neil is approaching this Artio with pretty much the amount of respect that you need to, which is just, hey, I've got the CC. I can lock you down. I can put at least a little bit of pressure on you. Force Genetics' Snoopy to play the PK game as opposed to letting them get comfortable.
Got to get the call here from Scream. So far, though, things look fairly standard. He's off to a good start. Trouble in mid, though, for QvoFred. The unstable Vortex clips him. He and Paul both take a ton of damage. That means eUnited can now start to look a bit more around the map. Not a whole lot to grab, except mid Harpies. Maybe they want to go for back Harpies, so they'll just have to settle for their pressure. But I think this is what this Nike is going to be doing for most of the game here, Goremizer. In your face, the slow is so overwhelming, block and auto attacks, and really just kind of making life generally impossible.
I mean, do you really want to be the one who gets caught out by the combo that is going to be the Nike damage alongside a Janus damage? Like, it's just too much. So I think if you see him sitting around here, it's more than likely to force Paul to play safe, to play cautiously, which is not necessarily in Paul's wheelhouse, right? Slowing down the Knights is something that's big. They're really good at farming, especially in this early game. Both of these teams have a lot of control over, like, Furies in their early game as well, so there's something to be said about trying to shut that down as much as possible. I think if you can take that out of the mid and the jungle, I mean, the duo lane's already getting pushed back. They're doing their job, so if I'm Scream, I'm absolutely sitting on Paul.
He's in the right spot in the middle lane here so far. We're letting this Nike be the headline. I think rightfully so, but story 2 should certainly be Hurriwind on this Janus. It's one of his signature picks. I think he's one of the few people that I feel comfortable seeing play this at the SPL level, because I think that Janus has to be played so specifically in order to get value as NeilMah continues to look for the buff invades. Not successful here this time, but when you're facilitating the Janus jungle like Hurriwind likes to do, it can be hard to beat.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the biggest thing. When you have a Janus on your team, already this team has a lot of mobility, which is going to be great for the escapes. Again, if Knights are able to jump on you, maybe you're going to get locked down. There's a lot of stuns, a lot of CC capabilities, and a lot of chase potential for them. But it's kind of hard to chase the guy who can go through a couple of walls if he has his ult available, right? It's just difficult to lock him down, makes him even safer. Then you add in a Nike shield, all the peel that eUnited have on them, and late game, he's just free-firing from the backline. If you're able to get back there, it's someone like Scary D, who maybe is going to be able to kind of cultivate himself enough of a lead, you know, coming from the solo lane, to jump over and cause some trouble and distress for him. But then I'm looking at the anti-heal, which is mainly coming out of the Sobek. It's just built into his kit at 50%. If you need to deal with Camazotz, it's all in the sustain. I think that they have a really good kind of counter draft here for eUnited to play the long con.
They want to try and do it, Scary D. Yeah, that's going to have to be part of it, right? Finding some way to keep this Camazotz under wraps.
Yes.
Another thing to know with the Janus jungle before we move on is he just farms look at the charts. It just farms too quickly. No one else can keep up with how quickly my man moves around the map. He's top of the XP and gold charts as well, just because that's how Janus farms, man. It's really not that there's an issue from Paul, the pressure from Qvo. Janus just does this. But the Scary D conversation's a good one too, right? I don't know if Janus is the best at applying something like Divine Ruin. He doesn't come right to my mind when you think of that, but they've got variety and keep that applied. Scream get in the backline too. It might be more about trying to kill everyone else, and maybe they don't take Scary D down. It's going to be a tough call for him.
It's difficult after seeing what Scary D has done in terms of zoning for that team to think of a strategy that's like, maybe we just ignore him for a little while and hope that things go well. Because, I mean, we've seen him like, Amaterasu is the one that comes to my mind, where it's just like, cool, he ran into your backline and then stopped you from playing the game. 3 of you on any team, if he's allowed free reign, might get pulled away from that. And maybe you can ignore it for a little bit, but I think you're relying a little bit on the safety of your team, right? If Hurriwind gets dove on by a Camazotz, ideally he just portals through a wall and gets as far away as he can, because otherwise you're not going to be in a good spot.
Snoopy committing the ultimate here just to secure some back timing, it looks like to me, and I get it, man. He has been under a tremendous amount of pressure on the left-hand side because NeilMah on this Artio pick, we don't see a lot of Artio support picked up anymore. It's something that Aurora used to like to do, but it has allowed for them to bully, to constantly invade purple. And now it even sets up for a red buff invade, but the through space in time has allowed eUnited to perhaps catch Pittsburgh Knights off guard. Suddenly QvoFred is in a bad spot, but it's not enough damage. Maybe the turnaround could be here on to Scream. He's low, and Zapman's getting aggressive, but the Impale just a bit off the mark. Scream should survive.
And Scream just a hair away from all of those abilities that are getting flung at him. I mean, so close to getting taken down. And if he has just a smidge more mana, then he turns around, he shields, he walks away, no problem. Anyway, I think there's a lot of investment from the Knights. I mean, 3 ults drop down. Granted, every ult on the side of eUnited down.
It's an early rotation from who else but Scary D, and it sets up first blood. Hurriwind wasn't expecting it, and this is just what you were talking about, Gormizer. I don't think you can leave Scary D unchecked because he will rotate with even a small lead, even no lead, and start to have an impact elsewhere on the map.
It's a really nice mentality to have as a solo laner, where it's almost like he doesn't care about all the farm he could be getting. He's looking at getting everyone ahead. He's still, even though he's off over there on the island, playing for the team. Almost kind of considering this like it's a late game team fight already. Hey, can I rotate to this and make it worthwhile? If the answer is yes, then he's going to be there.
Well, finally, some pressure from Scream in the duo lane now, and he's keeping NeilMah zoned out. Should be a good opportunity for some decent damage. But this Artio has been able to disengage quite well. As long as you can't interrupt that dash, then most times Artio can make it out. That's what we see happen here for Neil, even though he might not have been planning to take a back there. Now he's got it happen.
I'm really interested to see how this Artio is going to transition throughout the game, though, as you get more CC that has longer duration online, and it allows that setup for someone like Paul, who also brings his own CC, for Zapman, who also brings his own CC, but the damage that they apply as well. I think there's a lot of trade-off that can come through if Neil gets aggressive here. You just have to be really careful with it, right? I mean, Hu Yi marks you, stuns you, and then bops you down to half health before you can get anything done. If you're lucky, it's a slow rotation from the rest of eUnited and you don't die. Otherwise, I don't know if he's going to be able to be as upfront as he wants until, I mean, we're looking at 3, maybe 4 items down the line.
It is a nice little lead here for Pittsburgh Knights, though, Gore, to start this game off. And that has come almost entirely, I feel like, from their duo side pressure. They're at about 1,700 in gold, 1,500 in experience. That's because they've been able to easily steal these purple buffs. Snoopy can't stay in lane to farm because of exactly this. Artio is so good at locking down targets and setting up for kills. But now Scream trying to get a bit aggressive himself. Maybe see if they can claw back some of this farm by pushing out Paul.
This is actually something that has been very consistent with the Pittsburgh Knights. Their GPM is one of the highest in the league. I mean, 521, which is just a little bit behind some of the others. A lot of these teams are around that mark. They've been able to end and average out through game, but that is something that the Knights do well. And a lot of it comes from this duo lane and a lot of control that then shifts over to specifically Gold Furies and Fury fights. They just know the left-hand side of the map. Unfortunately for them, that hasn't translated as much to the right-hand side of the map. For a lot of these late-game fights for the Knights is where everything falls apart. I mean, they've said it in interviews. We've seen it when they've had leads at 27 minutes. And so it's a lot of patience. How long can they hold on to this? And what do they do when the other shoe drops?
And I said, Gore, that a lot of this lead was over in the dual lane, but look at this X-speed gap that's starting to develop in the jungle. It's about a level and a half or so in favor of QvoFred. Scream only just ticked over to level 8. You know, this Nike might be a bit slow to get started before we really see the Terra that she could bring later on. Plus, the Knights have been really active throughout this early game too, so some of that farm has been stripped away from Scream.
You do get one good news. Even though Screammm is kind of losing in that aspect, you're still looking at where he can get his passive, right? Hitting those goals throughout the game, being able to get themselves set up, and just applying that to your team. Even if he's not on level, as you hit those marks, everybody's getting a bonus.
Red buff invade. Again, NeilMah really the only one that steps up this time, but it doesn't matter. He's successful in stripping away the buff, and that pressure continues. That time, eUnited had rotated several members over to defend, but I don't know that Screammm was there for it, and because of that, Neil's able to walk in unchecked largely, take the buff, and get back out. I'm wondering where eUnited are planning on making their stand. What do you think, Thor? Does it need to be a Gold Fury fight? Do they just need to send more people to the buffs to defend? Where can eUnited sort of make their stand?
Honestly, if I'm eUnited, I'm realistically looking, in my eyes, the best way to either get Hurriwind much further ahead or Screammm back in the game, right? Because he's a little bit behind now if you look down. Technically 2 levels, and like you said, maybe 1.5. It's where can you find a fight that gives him an advantage? And so maybe sitting on Paul, trying to find a good way to force Raijin to use that dash and then catch him out with the follow-up. If you can force it into Gold Fury, that's going to be great, but I like the pressure they've been putting. Most of the time before this was on that red buff of the Knights. Just a little bit of pressure to force them to fight. It hasn't come to fruition yet, and now they've lost the timer. So maybe they've lost their opportunity to find that early kill. But you also have to watch for Scary D.
Yeah, both solo laners have completed the proxy, so I think the info's got to be there that Scary is rotating around the map a bit more. I don't know that Hurriwind was quite ready for it. He takes about half HP, but he does make it out of there. This is a big grouping from the Knights near gold, but I mean, we're 11 minutes in. I don't know if they want to force the fight, but it's Scary D that gets pulled back in and never gets the ultimate off. Variety ends up chomping him down, and there's the big ultimate from Genetics as well. So the rest of the United can start stepping on the gas pedal, but the disengage so far from the Knights has been clean. Zapman manages to escape as well, and eUnited only get 1.
I mean, that's a big pick, though. We've been talking about how potent Scary is, and that's a great grab.
Zapman with a Desert Fury still gets pulled back in. Great timing on the charge prey. Variety made that fight for eUnited there, and they end up finding 2 unanswered. They're still all grouped around the goal, but I don't think they feel comfortable getting it. As it a dive in mid, QvoFred gets the kill on Hurriwind.
And he's so low, but there's no one nearby. I mean, Genetics looks like they're running into the back line to try and find him, but Qvo should be pretty safe here. Yeah, he's going to get out, no problem. And so make it 2 for 1, right? You're able to get rid of Hurriwind, you make it a little bit of an equal trade, you make sure that Paul, who is still deathless, has that little bit of time to farm without any answer from Hurriwind. But you get Scary D, who is inarguably a huge proponent for the Knights' victories because of the rotations he makes. And you get rid of Zapman, which more than anything helps get Snoopy in a comfortable position now and opens up the door for the duo lane, who's been kind of losing that farm already from the Artio pressure, to take back some control here for eUnited.
That's good looks for Snoopy, truly, that he's getting a little bit of extra time to breathe because he's kind of been behind all game long up until this point. But that is great work from QvoFred to track down Hurriwind on the backside of that fight, because otherwise the Knights are going to leave with basically nothing. Instead, he still finds some kind of way to tax eUnited and keep this game, keep their lead where it was, right, or at least pretty close to it, because eUnited were starting to try and claw back in with that great initial play from Variety to find a couple of picks. But you saw it. Look what's happening now for that soul lane. Both of them are basically proxy farming right now. That's when those rotations are going to come out. They're going to push the waves out. They know they don't have to worry about any pressure happening in their lane, and they can start to rotate. That's exactly what Scary's doing.
The issue is where Scary can find anything, right? I mean, if he dives over here, it's putting a lot of pressure potentially onto Qvo to make something happen.
Wow.
You can see he's already running back to the lane.
That was close. Snoopy would have been dead to rights if that impale lands. Instead, now Screammm can push Zapman under the tower for some free damage. And here comes the cavalry as they on their way via that great ultimate from Hurriwind. eUnited find one more pick as Zapman goes down. Another good charge play from Variety. It's NeilMah that gets pulled in now. The wall stun there. The knockup's there. The root is there. The CC chain is overwhelming, and NeilMah has no options. It's a 2 for 0 for eUnited.
And that's what this draft is built to do. It's just going to overwhelm you with power. I mean, they drop a couple of ults just to make sure that happens the way it does. But then what are you going to run away from? They have all these different forms of lockdown. And unless you have some really fast mobility, much like the Pele, or a get-out-of-jail-free card like the Bat Out of Hell from Scary D, you're going to get caught out 9 times out of 10, or you're going to have your relics forced. And this time, unfortunately for Zapman, his speed just came up, so he's not going to have them.
I'm just surprised that that's 2 fights in a row, as the Gold Fury is going to go down for eUnited. I don't think anyone from the Knights are close enough to try and defend. But I'm just surprised, if both solo laners are proxying, how come that's been 2 fights in a row where Variety has been able to out-rotate Scary D? That first time, he gets there a little bit ahead of him and is able to set him up for a pick. And this second time, I don't think Scary was in the fight at all, and Variety was the big difference maker there. It's just a bit surprising, as Variety is aggressive here in solo, but without much backup. I don't know how much kill potential he has, though. He forces the blink out from Qvo defensively.
The team doesn't want to stop that aggression. Again, you look at CC, both sides have it. Neil is just looking for some pressure in the duo lane. But bringing the conversation back to specifically where Scary D was, we had seen him proxy and start an early rotation compared to Variety. And it was right around the time I said, well, is he going to dive the tower? I mean, there were 2 members of eUnited hanging out under tower, and the Knights looked like they could get aggressive, but there was not much of a chance, right? Nobody wants to see them dive in there. And so he went back to proxy, and that's where Variety used his teleport. He recognized that he could come over and impact the fight, and that's going to be on cooldown. Like, just getting into that engagement a little faster, maybe losing some farm in the process, helped out the team so much more. Then, you know, Janus portal, the rest kind of spells itself. Everybody's on top of you, and you get a couple kills and a Fury for it.
It's just so funny. We were worried about how eUnited were going to deal with Scary D in these engagements, and we kind of jokingly said maybe they'll just try and fight around him. And isn't that how it's actually worked out these last 2 fights? In that second one, he kind of just got a bit out-rotated. On that first one, he was the one that was picked first, so they didn't have to so much worry about him in that last engagement. But Variety is showing that this Sobek is definitely still strong. Scary getting aggressive on the speed buff, trying to strip that away, is going to be able to hold onto the ultimate. Has NeilMah here for backup, so doesn't have to use that defensively despite the pressure from Variety. It's Scary trying to find a little bit of extra value now with pressure on the jungle.
Just every time eUnited are grouped up around Hurriwind, everyone just look to the right screen and see if his ult is up, right? Because that's going to be the biggest danger, I think, for Knights, because they keep doing it. They just hang around him, and it makes such a huge difference. Also, with that Erendite now picked up for Scream, you have the ability to dropship in with a Hurriwind ult, and then he can pop the shield, chase someone down, and then the CC chain starts, right? And that is going to be the biggest threat to Hull, to Qvo, to Zapman, anyone who can't get away instantly. If your blink is down, if your beads are down, your Aegis is gone, you are under duress at that moment, because he's now shielded faster than you, slowing you down so his team can then catch up and just melt you. There's a lot of potential for eUnited to kind of snowball, and they have to invest in it pretty heavily early on, but if you're not willing to kind of take the risk, or maybe if you just get caught out, it's a very dangerous game, and the ward coverage has been all red all game. They're preparing for a late-game war against the Knights, and they've got the intel they need.
Scream going to be a nightmare later on in this game. But so far, I mean, he's 1-0-3. It's a good slash line for sure. And he's 3rd in player damage. So the impact has been there. Maybe if it visually hasn't quite seemed that way. 4 members from eUnited on the left-hand side of the map, but Zapman, recognizing it, has backed up. There is no target for aggression. There is no jungle to try and strip away either. So even though eUnited have this many members showing presence, they shouldn't be able to get much more. So what do you think about this overall pace? Does it favor either of these teams, Corey? I mean, I feel like both of them have plenty of claim to late-game team fights.
I want to say that, if I give it to anyone, it would maybe be eUnited, just because the Nike passive comes online, and that's benefiting everybody. But yeah, it's much like you say, it's kind of right down the middle. It depends on the engagement. At any given time, someone could take a small advantage based on where Scary D is for the fight for the Knights, or how many cooldowns NeilMah has going into it.
Yeah, I suppose the dive nature of the Knights could start to wane a bit, right? Camazotz, Pele, Artio, all are going to be doing a lot of that dive work, trying to get to the back of eUnited, whereas the double Guardians for them might set eUnited up a bit more to be teamfight focused, so maybe a slight edge to eUnited, as you said, but still, I don't know, man. I think the Knights aren't going to go away.
It depends on how divey the Knights can get, as weird as that sounds. It's just, you can dive once, you burn beads, maybe you burn Aegis, you burn some blinks or some leaps. Then can you chase them down afterward? It's the second dive in the fight that makes the big difference. So what can Neil get on his own? What can Scary D force on his own? Because those will force eUnited to play differently. Hey, is Hurriwind's portal down? All of a sudden it's easier to then collapse in on this Janus. Did you get Scream's leap? Awesome. Jump in and fight. But you got to get them. And like you said, Variety is kind of your second base when it comes through. I guess your second shield for eUnited. If Hurriwind's portal is down and you jump on him and then you get plucked, Well, now you have to have a third dive ready for you, right? It's just, there's a lot of peel for eUnited, a lot of getaway, and I think it plays very defensively, which is not going to necessarily save a bunch of tier 2s, especially if the Knights get a Fire Giant buff. But then when you're under Phoenix Siege, the Knights are going to have a lot of trouble breaking the base. So the longer the game goes, even if eUnited get their backs against the wall, there's still a lot of fights that favor them. And it makes the Knights, it kind of puts them in a box where they have to think outside of it, right? They have to be creative about every engagement from this point on, or else eUnited can walk away, maybe even bait them into an unfavorable situation.
Pace has slowed down a bit, though. It was the Knights that were aggressive at the start of the game, largely around Neil and Zapman's pressure in the long lane, but we haven't seen much since then. eUnited have been grouping up a lot. I think they like their team fight right about now, so Variety can report 2 over by Pyro, which means eUnited have the favorable 4v3 here at the Fury. That's why they're starting it up. Oni is being looked at through space and time, is heavily committed. The Knights get the Fury, but that's because eUnited want this kill on the Zapman, and Scream gets it, just walks him down, and there were few options for escape. Scary D now starting to show, but the fight, Volcanic Lightning, though, rips through for a bunch of damage. But how much does QvoFred have behind it? Scream gets a big knockup, but he's got plenty behind it. Cubo finds one. Paul gets the second with the Taiko drum, so it's 2 for 2. It's Scream too low. Paul able to find a double, and the Knights turn that fight around. It's the Fury and a 3 for 2.
And in a comp that is so good at getting away from dive, they then jump into the Knight. If that Fury goes at least in favor of eUnited, then maybe you're looking at this as a wash. Okay, a 3 for 2, we at least got a Fury. They lose that too, they're going to lose so much pressure across the map. You are now open for potentially a Pyromancer, or much like what Scary D is doing, hey, your jungle's mine now. What are you going to be able to do about it? You can come take the smalls, but I'm at least going to get the buff. He can teleport over, make sure everything still goes their way. The Knights adapt and react to that just so beautifully, and I think it realistically starts when Variety pulls them off the Pyro. If they're there uncontested, maybe they don't make that rotation in time.
That's interesting. Maybe they just stay on it, right, and eUnited can get that fight for free. Variety has used the ultimate in mid. He's chasing down Paul and gets the Aegis out from him through space and time. Comes through as well, but not quite enough to take down the Raijin. It's just a curious fight, though, from eUnited. They start that off looking like they want the Fury. Then they commit the through space and time and one more member to try and hunt down Zapman in the back. They end up giving up the Fury. I don't know if they maybe thought they had that confirmation on lock, but either way, they kind of don't get either of the things that they're looking for. I mean, they do get the kill on the Zapman, but they end up losing the fight and the objective. Now down almost 5,000 gold, 7,000 experience. Going to be even tougher for them in the next fight.
And that's the wild door opener that makes it just so difficult. Knights have had a lead this entire time. They've just been out farming. I mean, they've consistently stayed ahead even after losing fights. And now you just kind of gifted them what I would argue is a silver platter. Here's a Fury and a favorable fight for you. They might not have been able to follow up with as much on the map, but it puts them in this position to now take control. There's no Fury on the left-hand side. Zap doesn't have to worry about a rotation. And based on Knights' kind of positioning and aggression here in mid, they've gone to the 3v3. They expect to be able to maybe push a fight, go for that Pyromancer, and again, kind of keep eUnited on the back foot, constantly reeling back into their base until you can find and take this lead and turn it into what it could be.
Trouble, though, for Snoopy. Caught out in the jungle, and QvoFred will get the kill. That was a team effort, though, as the entirety of the Knights locked down that lone Hou-Yi trying to roam the map. And as if the Knights didn't already have a ton of pressure, that opens things up even more. The left side tier 1 falls. Hurriwind being chased expertly by Scary D through space and time as to come out defensively to get him away from that Camazotz. So that means the rest of the squad can keep up this left side pressure on the tier 2. They've got a minion wave here with them. Paul here too. They might actually be able to bring this one down, but in comes eUnited. Scream drops the big Sentinel of Zeus. That brings Zapman down low. Taiko drums try and pull Genetics back in, but after all these ults, I don't know if the Knights still love this fight. It's more blinks from eUnited as they want to keep this action going.
I mean, they're going to be chasing it down. Variety looking for Zap, but he's not going to be able to find the lock that he wants, and with a good pillar, Zap might be out.
Zap should be out. The Aegis is well timed too. QvoFred now becomes the target as he looks for the turnaround damage, but it's eUnited that are on the retreat. They liked the fight for a moment. They started to chase, But once the Knights got Zapman out of there, they didn't love it anymore. But there's a pluck from Variety, Scary D in the CC chain as the portal's there for him too, but it's not enough damage to take down this Camazotz. The Knights are fully retreating, but now that Scream has showed up, I don't know if eUnited want to let them leave for free. They're going to take every bit they can get.
Well, the good news for the Knights is they have just enough self-sustain kind of across the board to keep things going, and there's only a Brawler's Beat Stick on the other side to try and shut down Scary D's healing and NeilMah's healing.
Whoa.
But because they've got them so low and they're keeping them distracted on the left-hand side, still Variety doing a great job. That's a Fire Giant call.
It is. This is a great call from eUnited too. 40% CDR for Hurriwind plus the Chronos Pendant passive means that even though Scary forced out his ult, it's back up. They couldn't have been prepped for it. Fire Giant low, and eUnited get it before the Knights can even make it into the picture. Genetics is low and Scary D trying to hunt him down, but even if they lose him, it's worth, and they're not even going to lose him. What a call from eUnited to just go right over to the FG and burn it quick.
That might be one of the most beautiful moves in SMITE I've seen from a team, period. I mean, just recognizing the state of it, being able to force the Knights back, and even knowing that, you know what, we're not winning a fight here, really. We're just making them play safe. There's no fury for us to go to immediately afterward. Hey, let's go ahead and drop ship to the other side of the map. And that's something that Janus brings. And Hurriwind is the one guy who's running him at this level. And so it's something that, if you're not eUnited, what are you going to do? Who else can make that kind of play? Maybe if you have Horus, but with his ban rate, I doubt you're going to see that from much else. That Janus is proving more and more worth every minute.
Well, we are starting to see eUnited's identity, though, aren't we, Goremizer? I mean, it's either the Horus for genetics or Hurriwind on this Janus, but either way, they spread the map thin, and they really are confident using Variety as sort of this feint, this bait, where people think because they see a Variety that eUnited aren't up to anything elsewhere, and it buys them a little bit of extra time. A little bit too aggressive there with Snoopy. Dive Bomb allows him to reposition, but they want this fight in Pittsburgh Knights, want to defend on the tier 2. We don't see this a lot, but they still have the gold lead, so they're not going to give anything up to eUnited here for free.
And the pressure is going to be on. Again, Variety is going to be able to either peel or set up everybody, and you can see he's just patiently waiting for it. Hurriwind sitting in the back, ready to kind of be at the beck and call of the team once they go in.
That initiation, though, from Scream is just going to make life so hard for the Pittsburgh Knights. Look how much trouble Zapman's in already. It's even more as Hurriwind gets the kill. Variety keeps up the pressure, forces the Taiko drums out from Paul, and he shrugs it off. That's the tier 2 tower secured. They do lose Hurriwind in the back. QvoFred doing good work again to hunt down this Janus, but it cost him his life. It's another 2-for-1 in favor of eUnited, and they're just going to group up and left and threaten the Phoenix.
Yeah, you have to look at the scales. You lose Hurriwind, but he got his ult out already, right? So it leaves you open, and hey, Snoopy's still alive. Snoopy still has Fire Giant buff. You've got your mainstay Phoenix killer alive and ready.
And remember, Variety already forced out Taiko drums, so one of the best defense tools not available. Variety even finds the charge prey onto Paul, interrupts him before he can get the Thunder Crash off. Now he's safe, but that leaves Scary D alone with the dive in the back. But this defense still good from the Knights. eUnited not getting nearly as much tower pressure as they wanted. Maybe things look better now as another good pluck from Variety gets the kill on the Scary.
Well, the biggest factor of that, though, is the slowdown coming in, specifically from Paul, right? And it's not something huge, but the team groups up for a Terra heal, and they're all standing next to each other. But lucky for Paul, Raijin happens to have damage that can bounce through. If you saw those numbers bouncing around everyone of eUnited, that was essentially all he needed to do to apply Divine Ruin to everyone. And it just stops a Phoenix Siege in its tracks, right? Because not everyone's going to be able to heal for this. Cooldowns are now stamina, or I should say respawns are coming up for the Knights. And so you get your base. You get to at least save the Phoenix, which honestly, that's the biggest win that you've got in the last 5 minutes of gameplay for you. Pause it out, 30 seconds left on the Fire Giant, so you can just wait, regroup, try to be there for this one.
It's a big deal that they defended that left side Phoenix core. I'm right there with you. That was the furthest one from the Fire Giant, obviously, and thus the most valuable. But how often do you see a team get the Fire Giant, win the fight on the back, and have a decent siege, but still be down in gold? They have the gold. They have the kill lead as well, do eUnited. But really, technically, the Knights are still in the lead here in this game. It was a great, I don't know if Hail Mary is the right play. It was right term because it was more consistent than that, but just great awareness from eUnited to bring them back this much closer. Look at those big dips down in the charts. That's all off the back of that map awareness from them to get over there to the FG, strip it away quickly, and now be in the late game on even footing.
And just being able to, like you said, get yourself back into this position, you still have essentially what is the gold gap left in towers on the map, right? As long as you pick up those tier 2s at some point, then you're going to be able to equalize it, which kind of nullifies the early game farm from the Knights, or at least keeps it from being as important, especially as most people are now level 20 genetics, one level behind NeilMah, but they're the only ones not maxed out.
I think they want to try and trap Scary D here, Gore Miser. The wall stuns there, going to force him into the ultimate, but he hasn't even had a chance. The CC chain is way too strong. Scary D eventually gets the bat out of hell off, but look how low he is. Hurriwind drops the ultimate. They are on the hunt for Scary D, and they found him. Snoopy gets the kill, credit for it, and now with the 5v4 power play. Oh, coincidentally, right as the Fire Giant comes up, no, that's well planned. It's crafted as the United start up the objective.
All right, so if everyone turns to page 1 of their handbook here against the Knights, eUnited are doing the only thing that's on the list, which is, hey, stop Scary D from existing in the game. And it leads you to a lot. I mean, Neil now plucked into a bad spot. What's he going to do? I mean, he's half health. He can't contest a Fire Giant now.
And really, they don't even have QvoFred here, so there's no one that can step up and help him fight. NeilMah drops down to the pressure from eUnited. They're still grouped in between. They do decide that they're going to head back and grab this Fire Giant. It just ticked over to Enhanced, though, so that does make it a bit harder for them to grab. And QvoFred still has that top side positioning, but he should have been on a ward, I believe. They should know QvoFred's back behind them. Variety has the other 2 zones, so they back off of the FG for now, as QvoFred holds this backside FG positioning. I don't know if they still have eyes on him as he waits for his moment. Volcanic Lightning lets him get in close, but eUnited secure. Zapman does get the kill on the Scream up near the front, but Snoopy stops Cubo in his tracks before he can find a kill.
Almost able to burn down Hurriwind. If he's not able to get the Fire Giant, he at least wants a kill. And, well, hey, Scream doesn't get the buff, so you walk away maybe with, you know, a grain of salt there for eUnited, victorious. But you got a power play going in your favor. You've got 3.5 minutes with some pretty healthy members on your team to push down what are now remaining 2 tier 2s and those 3 Phoenixes. The question is where they want to put that pressure, and honestly, I think on left, maybe grab a Fury, make sure your waves can start to push up since it's an Oni Fury. Then you can really open the doors to just knock down at least the left Phoenix or the mid Phoenix and try to make it a little easier to break down the base. It just depends on where their eyes are. You want to equalize the gold, get rid of those towers. You want to make sure that Knights have even more trouble in the future fights. There's already one exposed Phoenix, and I think that's going to be your best bet.
And Gore, I won't be here for eonic disparagement. I'm a big fan of the guy, both in and out of the game. But I think that this is what eUnited meant when they were talking about adding in genetics. It's just clearly more defined shot calling from them.
Yeah.
I mean, that call to pick Scary D, come back towards that FG cleanly, and then win that fight, I believe with the 2-for-1, or at least a 1-for-1 plus the objective. Now they're set up to push with Oni waves. I mean, it's cleaned from eUnited. The Hurriwind play to get them back over to the FG to even up the game and open up that left side siege was huge as well. Now they're sieging with the advantage on right side when they were losing basically the whole game up till now.
I mean, you go back in SMITE and look at some of the best shot callers. Pain to Beyond, you look at Iraffer in Seasons 2 and 3, like where they were able to accomplish it, it changes the pace of the game, and it changes everything. I mean, you can go back to that first Fire Giant call and just see who's going to make a call like that half the time. Like, that's just not a normal SMITE play that happens every day, and that is something that is different about eUnited from what we saw in the first weeks.
You're not going to see a lot of Variety missed charge praise, but that is one of them. Leaves him in a bad spot and makes life easier for Zapman, who did not have beads. Scream goes in aggressive. He ends up falling this time as Zap gets the turnaround kill. And all the while, right side Phoenix still stands. QvoFred's in the back line, finding big knockups as well, as there is some low health bars, but it looks like he wasn't able to clean up any actual kills. They're trying to hunt down Hurriwind way in the back as he gets that kill on the NeilMah. Right side Phoenix is low, but is still standing. Not a bad defense from the Knights so far.
I mean, being able to hold on to it, but it is 1 to 2 hits away. Snoopy still with Fire Giant, still in the area, and still a minute on the clock before they lose that buff. It's the Knights, or I'm sorry, it's eUnited wanting to just kind of ram the door down here and open it up. They've got a wave coming in with them. They're going to take away those protections, and there's another pluck.
And that one lands, so those are the beads out from Paul, but Variety has to pay the tax, and the tax is his life. Zapman and Paul work together to punish the Croc. Now, Can there be aggression from the Knights? Snoopy makes it through the portal, courtesy of Hurriwind. Good work there with the teamwork. But I don't think the Knights are done looking to be aggressive. They've all leaped in. The Taiko drums for the taunt to bring him back in is enough for Scary D to close the gap. There's a portal waiting, but they're not going to let Genetics get to it. Another pick, as I like the idea that through space and time, just a bit too late. And the Knights answer back. They even keep their Phoenix up.
And now they're going to be able to get aggressive in moments where they haven't been able to put that pressure on. There's still some minions over here. I like where Qvo goes. Yeah, you leave the team dry, but you pull everything away. Keep that Phoenix safe. Because like you said, it's low, but alive. And that is all that matters to the Knights. They get a good Pyromancer right afterward. They will lose their gold lead, but at the end of the day, doesn't matter when you are able to keep them on their foot. You burn that Fire Giant, you keep yourself alive. And now you can start looking at getting aggressive, and that's not something they've been able to do for like 15 minutes, it feels like. I mean, once you hit 20 minutes, it was all eUnited baiting them into fights, pulling. It was that one Fury fight that switched things over for them. And even though eUnited lost that, they've maintained control since then. And this is the time for the Knights to kind of rip it back.
That's another good point, Gore, that you bring up. eUnited were kind of calling the shots from behind for the last 15 minutes, weren't they? They weren't letting that 3,000 to 5,000 gold deficit deter them, and you're starting to see the fruits of that labor. But this is good work from the Knights as well to kind of bring this game back towards parity now, because everyone should be able to come out and posture around this next Fire Giant, I would think, with that right side Phoenix being well defended. But it looks like United again are going to be the aggressors. Look how far forward they've started to push. Variety's right in the thick of it. Taking a good bit of damage, though, from Paul. But the through space and time might have caught them off guard. Variety can't find the charge prey that time, and that might be enough to deter the aggression. If they could have got one member displaced, they'd have all in committed.
A lot of United's success has been built around Variety. If he gets a pluck,
Yes.
that's a kill that makes it a 4v5. We saw at that Phoenix, the last fight they lost, Variety got the pluck, the beads came out, but it was the melt of his health bar right afterward that dictated what happened to eUnited. And if he's not careful, that can happen again. He has to be very careful with every charge prey. It's great setup, but it's also great displacement for you. It almost helps the Knights if they're prepared and ready to react.
So far, 2 Fire Giants have gone to eUnited. Can Pittsburgh Knights find theirs? Maybe not if Paul loses his beads this early. Goes up into the Taiko drums to buy some space as Scream has been relentless. It's enough control to cost Scream his life. Meanwhile, Scary D has nearly won the 2v1 of the backline up against Snoopy. Brings him low, but not enough for the actual kill as Genetics gets locked down. There are all the walls, but it's not enough as QvoFred gets another kill. This is the point where you'd think eUnited's double Guardian comp would win it out, but the Knights found 2 big dives and were able to win.
And they're perfectly staggering this. Zap's going to stay in the area, although I don't see him getting aggressive. But, I mean, you're not going to 3v1 the Fire Giant, especially at 36 minutes with the Knights still being available and having the man advantage on you. So United just have to play kind of Guardian. They're goaltender for the Fire Giant. If it gets low, you need someone in the area, and that's why Hurriwind's life is maybe the most important. Variety can dash in, but Hurriwind can create a non-stop rush to the Fire Giant with his ult if they need it. And so if I'm the Knights, I should say, I'm looking for that pick. I'm trying to bait at least one more member out of eUnited, burn them down, then get the rest of the FG.
Hurrowind's lurking on the back of the fight, but Scary D knows where he is, so Hurriwind has to disengage. Meanwhile, the rest of the Knights can keep right on burning the FG. It's down low, through space and time, doesn't hit anyone. It's not enough for the steal on the Fire Giant either. So that means with the Taiko drums, the Knights should be able to grab this largely uncontested. And Gore, have you been impressed with the Nike here so far this game? I have a quick moment to talk about it, as that Sentinel of Zeus doesn't give nearly as much health if you're not building a lot of health in your item build.
Early on, I think Scream had something going for him, but the last, 5, 6 engagements? I guess 4, looking at his death counter. He's been the first one gone, almost every single time for eUnited, and so there hasn't been much follow-up. There hasn't been much room for him to do anything, just because of moments of sometimes getting caught out, like we saw in the last one on the right-hand side. Sometimes maybe being the sacrificial lamb as the team wants to jump in. You go in, like you said, Sentinel of Zeus is great, but it's not going to give you anywhere near the boost that you see if you were building a kind of standard warrior out of the solo lane. So he's not made that impact just yet, and it's very much slowed down from early on. I think, again, the passive, much like Discordia, you can never overlook what it's applying for your team, but then you have to look at where the abilities are going, and honestly right now, they're falling a little flat. If he goes big in the next fight, that might be the key for eUnited to just stay alive right now.
Yeah, and it feels like to me what the issue, Gore, is that Scream can't match the dive of the Knight. So let's say that Scream is going in and finding a 1v2 that he's favorable in for a little while. Well, the Knights have 2 1v2s that they like. Wherever Scary D and QvoFred are, they're favored in those dives that are happening on their side. It leaves Scream a bit on this island, and he can't quite do enough damage. When he dives Paul, he goes up into that Tycho drum, takes a bunch of damage and control, and Scream can't live through it. I mean, look at this build. It is all damage, right? So he's not able to get through much of that extra damage if he's not getting the kill early on. I just think because of the dive nature of the Knight, it's limited Scream's opportunities.
And there's a lot of potential with that Erendite. Again, if you jump in, you get that little bit of a shield to chase someone down, but it just hasn't been enough. Like you said, there's just as much retaliation from the Knights, if not more, in order to cause you to have to fall back and defend someone like Hurriwind or Snoopy. Otherwise, it peels genetics and variety away from you to save your teammates, and then you're left out to dry while they kind of keep their mage and their carry alive. There's just too many, I would say, easy jumps into the back line of eUnited for the Knights, along with the blinks on top of it. It just puts too much duress back there.
It's the left side Phoenix dive now as the Knights looking to see if they can burn this one down. Good defense so far from Variety to slow this out. Snoopy even commits to ult. eUnited want to take the fight. This isn't just defense. They're looking to play a little bit of offense, and it's working so far. NeilMah is low. Variety has 3, count them, 3 members zoned out of the fight, and he lives. What a game he's having so far on the Sobek. But it's not enough for any kills. The Knights disengage cleanly enough to keep everybody alive.
You got to keep your eye on the timer. A minute left for the Knights to be able to accomplish anything. They all 5 still maintain their Fire Giant buff, so them staying alive in that is big. Variety healing may be bigger just because of the objectives on the map it keeps. It slows down so much when you have a failed Phoenix Siege like that. Look at where they are on the map now. Halfway through, maybe you look at Pyromancer. That could be a pretty free objective. Maybe you go for some tier 2s, but realistically trying to siege a Phoenix in the next 40 seconds just isn't going to happen for you. So eUnited protect the mainstay of the base with their best abilities.
Plus, the game is still so close, right? I mean, the Fire Giant is the biggest difference between these teams 41 minutes into the match right now, so that's why United can still feel comfortable taking these skirmishes off of their Phoenixes. And it's worth talking about how good of a game that QvoFred and Paul are both having, right? I mean, I've been gassing up United with Hurriwind and Variety's plays and how great they've looked, but these two over on the side of the Knights have had great games here too, and Scary D's create a lot of space. It's just been a really good match, Gore, and I think that's what we expected. Pittsburgh Knights and United are both those middle-of-the-road teams that really need this win to try and break out of the pack.
Well, the Knights have been in this constant zone of, yeah, we make it to late game, we look great for 30 minutes, and then we lose 1 fight and lose the game, or maybe lose 2 fights and lose the game, depending on the state they left it in. And United, it's been, as you actually pointed out earlier perfectly, it has been this kind of push and pull of who are we? What are we looking for? What are we trying to do? And it's kind of that question. Right now, it feels like they've found their identity. They've recognized what they can do. They're playing gods that not many others are bringing into the league, at least that we've seen, and they're making plays with them that only those gods can. They've found who they are, and they're turning it to their advantage.
It's been working for them well so far, but what about these last few big team fights? This could potentially be a decider if the Knights are willing to try and fight out here on this Fire Giant. I mean, both teams can come out to it. Everyone has their Phoenixes up, and Relics should be mostly up. Cubo still a little bit away from Bead, Shell, a little bit away from Genetics as well, but those should be up in time for when they're needed in the actual skirmish, as this Fire Giant could sort of be that backbreaker. 2 have gone to eUnited, 1 to the Knights here so far.
This next Fire Giant might be the most important of the game, just depending on the fight around it. There's a lot of power pots picked up by the Knights right now, but I think the more important is actually the consumables in my eyes from eUnited. They are looking to take away as many wards as possible. The coverage on this right-hand side of the map right now is, if you're in-game, it's just lit up. There is not an avenue that you want to see that you cannot. And so everyone is being tracked. Their movement is known, and we've been looking at this game as the dive comp, right? Cuvo, where can he go? Scary, where can he go? And who do they want to isolate? Because it's very hard to lock down Hurriwind. It's difficult to lock down Snoopy. And that's where it comes back to the Screammm conversation we were having earlier. It's pretty easy to get Screammm out of this. You either force his blink and his leap, or you kill him. And either way, you're going to be able to walk away, I think, with a huge smile on your face if you're the Knights, because it keeps eUnited just falling back. They will never be able to push into a 4v5 feeling super confident unless Variety gets the pluck of his life.
They tried to cheat Zapman over towards the Oni Fury, which was about to spawn. That would have been a huge get, but eUnited started up the Fire Giant, which pulled him back. But now that they've dropped it, Zapman can stay at Oni and try and grab it. But look at this. Once again, Variety keeps his head on a swivel, comes over there, and slows him down. That would have been a great place. They could have got it. So they're going to try and catch them on the rotation. It works perfectly from the Knights as they blow up Hurriwind. I love that idea to bait eUnited to trying to defend Oni and catching some stragglers as they rotate. Now eUnited have to fully disengage on the back and the Knights before eUnited can set up, can try and blow down this mid-Phoenix.
And it's one of those rare moments where you actually have enough to be able to push into it. Variety gets a couple of peel, but there's going to be the Taiko drums.
Bring everyone back in and do a ton of damage. Genetics is going to join Hurriwind in the afterlife. Not going to leave you in black and white all alone, my friend. That's the mid-Phoenix down. No FGs necessary as a 5 up against 3. No ultimates available to try and help out here for the Knights either, so they might not love their ability to dive this Titan, but they got the numbers advantage, and they might not get another opportunity like this, so they make their way in. Variety does get out, but QvoFred gets deleted. It's a double from Screammm off the Sentinel Azus, and he wants more as Zapman's low make it a triple kill. Screammm showing what the knife he could do in the late game, but what about Paul? He's starting to put a good bit of damage out himself. Now he's got a double. Variety is starting to fall low as well as the knockups come through, but the Knights don't have to worry too much about that. They pushed Variety away, but there's just not much more they can do here, Gore. They're gonna have to back.
I like the Knights' call there. It's aggressive, but it fits based on their composition and what they've been looking for. That's a good shot from Hurriwind. And now he's going to be able to chase him down. This is what Hurriwind brings and something that the play has been. It's not just going to find kills here, but it's exactly what the Knights just used against them. He out-rotates you, and that helps the team.
That's really clean from Hurriwind, man. Tyler's pretty good at SMITE, it turns out. A nice deicide for him. And here's the look back at the big triple kill that Screammm was able to get earlier on in the early on in that defense that basically saves this one here for eUnited, because Pittsburgh Knights had all of the pressure. They definitely could have put that game to bed there, Gore, but now they're going to need a little bit more time before they can finish it off. They've got that mid-Phoenix down, though. That's going to give them a little bit of extra help in their next team fights, because eUnited has to worry about the fire minions in mid. But still, what a game this has been.
I mean, it's just so much push and pull. I love the fact that the Knights, again, use what eUnited have been using to their advantage against them. One of the best things they've had going for them is the fact that as long as Hurriwind has his ult, you can put pressure on, say the Oni Fury, which it was earlier, and then still make it over for the Fire Giant fight without giving up too much time. And so read the rotation. That's exactly what they were waiting for in mid that opened the door for them. But the biggest thing, as you highlighted it and we got the replay for it, after Screammm having some pretty non-impactful fights and getting maybe melted first of all, that's the best time for him to have a big show out for his kills and what he's able to do. This Nike, that is what she has in her back pocket. I wonder if we'll get to see it again.
They're going to need it from him as eUnited start up this Fire Giant, and QvoFred can't make it in time to slow them down. So the third FG of the game for eUnited now to try and work with, and looks like they're going to have an Oni minion way of pushing down too. So this is a pretty decent opportunity for eUnited to try and make something happen with those two big difference makers in their court. Scary D will take care of them one all the way over in the left, but eUnited want to push up mid here, Gore, because that's where their own Phoenix is down, so they can simultaneously take care of the fire minion waves and threaten the base.
Well, you still got some Oni minions over there in the right-hand side. They can take care of themselves. If you get pressure pushed forward in mid, especially if you're able to find that Phoenix in a good fight, then you at least equalize where things are going to be going. But at 50 minutes, I mean, we're looking at the point where the next fight could determine everything, especially if eUnited find it maybe defending a base. I mean, Hurriwind's ability to cross the map has been making and opening so many doors for them throughout all of this game. That's where my eyes go to. What can he open up in terms of avenues, either opening into the base of the Knights and finding some good kills, or getting them back in time to make sure that that Titan doesn't die. Right now their focus is respawning the Phoenix, then the play is in their book.
One thing to note this late in the game is the boots situation. Who has sold off the boots or that elixir of speed? Still the boots there for Scream as well as for Genetics. I think everyone else in the United has dropped them at this point. Still boots for Paul, it looks like, as well as NeilMah. So there's still room for a little bit extra power or maybe even, some protections, depending on what you need here in the late game, to come through for these teams. As eUnited look to threaten the mid-Phoenix, they've already pushed up the mid-wave. Their mid-Phoenix has respawned. Now they want the one furthest from FG.
And honestly, it's going to be a game of bait and switch. Although they're going to be playing the play, they're going to left.
You said the bait and switch scored 3,000 IQ. You're right there with eUnited as they made the play to come over to right, and the Knights weren't ready for it. I love watching this eUnited team play with this new identity. They're constantly drop shipping, constantly spreading the map faster than you can respond to, and they catch the Knights off guard again.
When we're in picks and bans, when we're doing desk, we always get to talk about, oh yeah, there's so many fun things you can do, but you never get to see them. They never happen, and eUnited has absolutely started doing that. I mean, you talk about fun with portals. This is thinking with portals from Hurriwind. This is the team making calls. I mean, that's 2 or 3 times now that they have done something that you literally could not do unless you have this Janus on your squad, and it's just... It breaks the Knights. They've used it to their advantage once by catching Hurriwind out in a rotation, but you're not in a position to do that if you're trying to defend your Phoenixes. And you said 5,000 IQ. I might even notch up a few thousand on there. It's just such good shot calling right now from eUnited to recognize these circumstances. You don't get to do that realistically more than once without it maybe getting caught onto, but the fact that you pull one out of your pocket, you make sure that happens. Now you have an advantage because they have to defend against the the right hand here, fire minions, and they have to defend against your siege in the left.
And still 40 seconds to work with on the actual Fire Giant buff itself too, so they've got a legit shot to burn down this left side Phoenix. Already good damage being put into it as it brought down low, but eUnited make decent defense, keep them back, and they'll have to back up before they could try and regroup.
I'm just trying to think what you do to counter this. My mind's almost already in game 2, but they still have to figure it out here. United are so close to being able to go in, and Variety's looking for the pluck.
Good damage on the Scary D in the back. He's been brought down to half. Variety cannot find the charge prey, but does get the beads out of Zapman anyway, so it's time for Scary D to move in with the bat out of hell. Looking for extra damage. It's not enough for the kill, but QvoFred in the back has found Scream, and he's won the 1v1 up against the Nike. So now he's got great positioning to try and wrap around. It looks like he's all out of fuel to keep up that extra movement speed, but they might not need it. The taunts land on Genetics to pull him back in. He can't get the dash off either as he's pinned into the wall, and he is dead to rights. It's 2 for the Knights on the left side defense.
Hey Finch, how does 80 seconds without a jungler or a support sound to you? It sounds pretty good to me, and I think that's exactly what the Knights are thinking. I mean, just clean time now on the map without having to worry about eUnited. It's going to be a 3v2 when this Fire Giant respawns. You're just barely going to be able to burn it down, I would say, if you're the Knights, especially, I mean, as long as they start it on respawn, before Scream even gets there. So you have plenty of time to play around with, and those kills are more important than ever, and it starts the exact way that a lot of these last engagements have. Qvo gets to the back line, and he wins the 1v1 that is maybe the most important. Scream isn't able to replicate that triple kill we saw for the defense. And unfortunately for eUnited, it means that even though they've made some 7 million IQ plays, it's not enough to end the game just yet.
Looks like this Nike pick might be a bit hot and cold, though, and there's a lot of hot and cold picks out there in the world, so hopefully Nike's hot is a bit hotter than some of the other ones, or else I don't know if I'm 100% full on board. But the Knights now have the opportunity to start looking at this Fire Giant. For some time is used. Hurriwind wasn't quite sure what the HP of it was, but that was enough to slow the DPS for a moment. But the Knights still end up securing it. It's their second Fire Giant of the game. 5 Fire Giants have gone down at this point. That is 25 minutes of the game accounted for just in terms of siege potential that these teams have had. It's a 53-minute slugfest to start us off here on a Saturday. And we thought coming in this would be a really good set, but I did not think that the very first game would be this exciting. It's been so back and forth. Both teams still have equal claim. I mean, I know the Knights have Fire Giant right now, but eUnited could easily still win this one, man. It's perfectly matched.
The best thing for the Knights is the fact that their right-hand Phoenix just respawned. There's one more wave of fire minions to deal with, and then the pressure is off over there, right? So you can fight full force on the left-hand side again, and maybe put this Fire Giant to use. Because, Finch, I'm going to tell you, the last, 3 Fire Giants we've seen haven't made the biggest difference in terms of ending the game for them. So it's an advantage. It's going to be sustained. It's something the Knights have that they should absolutely press as hard as they can. But it's not the end-all be-all right now. Like we normally feel, I mean, in 35 minutes, if you get a Fire Giant, normally I'm thinking, okay, the game's going to be done in the next 2 or 3. But even right now, I mean, one good couple of kills from eUnited and then one ult from Hurriwind gets them in a position to burn down that right Phoenix and open up the Titan.
They are grouped up and nearby. They're going to have to stay back and defensive, though. This is really the Knights' time to start moving around the map. Still a tier 2 up and right. I wonder if they want to go grab that just to make sure they're taking a little bit of extra HP off that Titan before they start their final siege on it. But I wonder if United are trying to group up to make some kind of big play around the through space and time. Yeah. Maybe not. They all head back towards the base here at this point. They're just going to be in position to defend.
You have to remember, mid Phoenix is weak for eUnited, so it's kind of an easy avenue for the Knights to put pressure on, much like the right Phoenix is an easy avenue for eUnited. Again, a lot of the pressure around this fight, specifically, my eyes are going to be on Hurriwind. He's the one opening the doors, or I guess the portals, realistically, for eUnited to find some of the big picks they've had. That's where this fight can be determined. If he is able to either A, stay safe, or B, help drop somebody into the backline to then cause distress for the Knights, all falls apart right here on the doorstep of their own Titan. But then, hey, if you have through time and space, there's, again, one big, easy, open target for you. It might not save the day, but at this point of the game, again, 80-second plus respawn timers, you just need 2 or 3, and that's it.
So the Knights will have the left side Phoenix pushed up. Meanwhile, the other 3 members will be working in mid. All the relics are going to be available here for this one, Gore. All the abilities. But look at Genetics' build. He finally did sell off his boots, but he has not finished off that last item. It looks like he's working on a mantle to go along with the spirit robe he already has. Good damage lands on Neil. He's down to half HP. QvoFred threatening left side Phoenix, but through space and time catches him for well over half of his health as well. The Phoenix still stands, and now Scream showing that Nike value after all as he keeps NeilMah pinned underneath the Phoenix. He sets up for the kill that Hurriwind brings home. So now the rest of the Knights have to fall back. There is something in this game about having the Fire Giant and sieging that means you are guaranteed to lose the fight.
I mean, both Phoenixes get very low, but they don't tick over that last little bit of health to be down, and so you don't even have to worry about fire minions right now if you're eUnited. That makes it so much easier to just sit back here and hang on, and as you've been pointing out, looking at the items, specifically now that the mantle is there, you've got the spirit robe, you've got some self-peel built in for Genetics alongside the rest of his abilities. This is going to allow him, and ideally maybe save him from when Paul's been catching him out on those retreats from eUnited, maybe stop that taunt from pulling him in. The Fire Giant just now fades away. And so the Knights, I would say maybe arguing to prolong this one. And Oni Fury, you've already got pressure in the waves. That keeps eUnited locked away in the base. Opens up another Fire Giant, but with 5 of them already going down and not ending the game, I don't know if that's going to be the real home run to end it for you. At this point, you're waiting for a little bit of extra gold. My eyes, more than anything, roll down to relics for Paul. He hasn't upgraded that Aegis, and granted, it is only going to give you cooldown timing, but at this point, it feels like the cooldown timer might be very important. I was thinking at 37 minutes, well, he can put that off. It's not going to be a big deal. What is it going to save him? At this point in the game, if he uses that Aegis and lives in the engagement, that little bit of cooldown could help him stay alive and have it again for something like a Titan defense.
United are very grouped up here in right. Knights have recognized, and they're on their way to try and deal with it, but Hurriwind's made some big through space and time plays before, so I wouldn't put it past him here yet again. He has used the threshold. Extra damage on the through space and time, but it does not hit Paul. He follows through fourth to try and catch a United off guard and fracture this fight. And Paul is the early target. He's in a heap of trouble in the back, so Snoopy drops the ultimate, but Paul lives through it all. It's Snoopy who ends up falling first. So Variety tries to find a little bit of extra damage on the QvoFred here now, but it's not enough. He grabs Zapman, plucks him back, but Scary D gets Hurriwind. All the damage dealers now removed from United. All the damage on Scream, and Scream's gone. on as well. The Knights might have finally done it here, Gore Miser. 58 minutes on the clock, and they've broken the backs of eUnited. Can they get these last few kills here on Genetics? Zapman can, a 4 for 0. Make it a full-on deicide as Variety cannot escape, and Pittsburgh Knights have sealed the game.
Yeah, you've got 50 seconds with no one coming to defend. You could probably even wager to do a Fire Giant and still kill the Titan if you wanted to just be flashy
yeah,
about
probably.
it. But that is exactly what they needed. And it's the second time this game that the Knights have been able to find a good siege on the base after reading what Hurriwind was trying to open up for eUnited.
It's frustrating for eUnited. It really has got to be, because it was an excellent game played by them. Nearly an hour committed to trying to win that game. To come away with the L has to be frustrating. But you saw their identity in that game, Gore. You saw the game plan from them. I liked the idea on that last play. They just didn't have quite enough damage to kill Paul. He makes it out safe. Snoopy ends up over-committing for him, and he dies too. But I like the idea with the dive. Did you at least like it on paper?
Yeah, I think if they are able to find even just a hit with that through time and space as they engage,
right, if it hits
changes the entire fate of that. And like you said, it kills off Paul, or maybe it hits Qvo if you put him in the right position. Like things like that, where all of a sudden we're looking at eUnited run down the other way and get a Titan. But I think Knights were kind of aware. They knew where the portals were coming, and they were waiting for it.
It felt like a bit like a coin flip there towards the end, but it ends up falling the Knights' way. The world champs maybe just have a little bit extra helping them out. Game 1 goes to PK, but I got a feeling this set's going to go on for a while longer. Let's get it back over to the desk to break it down.
Thank you, Finch and Gore. A well-deserved rest for an hour-long game there between PK and eUnited. Mifflin, we knew today was going to be pretty close between these two teams. I don't think that we could have guessed it was going to be that close. A ton of crazy plays to go over, but let's pick up where they just left off, that very final team fight. That's really what it comes down to for Janus a lot of the time, isn't it? It's you hope that you can hit a backliner with your ultimate, and if you don't, it's going to be hard to win the fight.
And it was so close. It was probably 10 pixels away from slamming Paul right in his throat. Unfortunately, he makes it out alive, and he uses his relics perfectly. He beads out the CC, and then he saves the Aegis to live through Snoopy's ultimate. That was fantastic positioning, and that's kind of the story of that entire game. Around the 20-minute mark, eUnited really shifted their focus towards trying to pick out Paul consistently by repositioning the team. They realized that doesn't really work, so they shift their focus towards objectives, and they start to see a lot of success there. They ult over to the Fire Giant with Janus, get that very easily. They ult around the map to get Phoenixes, but any time that the Knights really forced a fight 5-on-5, they came out ahead.
It was really, really impressive the way that eUnited was using this Janus, and that's what you expect out of Hurriwind, who's the best Janus in the league, and then Genetics, who seems to have the best map control and just the most willing to make crazy decisions and use these global pressure ultimates. I timed it, by the way, on that Phoenix where they Janus ulted from right to left. It took them less than 8 seconds to get from one lane to the Phoenix being dead in the other, and that's just unreactable in that amount of time. I mean, it felt like, though, eUnited gets so many plays. They get Fire Giant, they get Phoenixes. Why couldn't they end? Why couldn't they win those 5-on-5s? Because I feel like their composition was pretty well suited to do so.
I really think it does come down to that Janus pick. Yes, it affords them a lot of opportunity to play the map incredibly well, but the damage output isn't nearly as consistent. You don't have a fantastic way to apply Divine Ruin. There's really no fantastic burst potential outside of hitting that through space and time. The only way they're really triggering that Terra ult consistently is off of Snoopy's ultimate, and the entire time they have to contend with Qvo looking for the dive, Scary looking for the dive. They have so many ways to shut down these back lines that really eUnited didn't have a way to win the fight cleanly. And again, we have to say it, Variety manhandled that game from like the 10-minute to the 40-minute mark. I think you said it to me personally, we didn't see him miss a pluck until probably 42 minutes into the game.
He was just hitting everything, man. And as soon as fights started going PK's way, a lot of it was because Variety was missing those initiation plucks. And that's not necessarily a dig at Variety. You're not going to hit everything, no matter how good you are. So eventually, you're just going to have to find a way to win without those pluck initiations. And it felt like eUnited was unable to do so. We'll see what changes they want to make going into picks and bans. Miff, how hard is it to lose a game like that, though? Because 59 minutes, you've got Fire Giant, you're sieging Phoenixes, you're doing a lot of things well, but you can never quite close it out. I feel like when I was playing, those were some of the toughest losses. I would much rather just get blown out in 23 minutes than lose an hour-long game like that.
when a game goes the full hour, you know that early game loses all meaning, mid game loses all meaning. You're essentially at a completely even state after the 45-minute mark. So it's really only on you when you lose, and it really does hurt your soul. You commit a full hour of your time to a match and then lose it, especially considering that's the first game in the series. They've got what could be 2 more games ahead of them. That's got to weigh on your mentality, and it's incredibly exhausting trying to keep that focus up for such a long period of time.
It's tough, man. Competitive Smite locks you in a different way for sure, and it is mentally taxing to be in super long sets. And to start off game 1 with an hour-long banger, could be in for a long one here today between eUnited and PK. At least eUnited's hoping that it's going to be a little bit longer overall in the first set. As eUnited stick with their game plan, at least through the first ban, they stick with banning away a Paul God in that hell. And I think you brought up a great point on that last team fight. It's hard to name a more iconic duo than Paul and perfect relic usage. I think it's one of his greatest strengths as a player, and it's one of the best strengths to have as a backline player, is using those relics perfectly. It makes a world of difference at a competitive level, how quickly and how perfectly, as far as timing goes, you can use those relics at the right time. I'm sure that the perfect relic usage is not one of your favorite things to deal with, though, as a mostly jungle player.
It isn't, but if you think about it, Paul's been forged in fire for his relic usage. He's known for Pele, right? Am I saying that right? Paul Hell, and his Peebo. Sure. Those are both gods that are incredibly
No, we stay away from that one, man.
No Peebo? Paul Hebo.
No.
Paulbo.
Sure. Yeah, man. How about Hepo instead of Hebo? Because then you put the P in there for Paul. We're just trying to stay away from the first half of that. I think that you can understand why without even looking at Twitch chat. Hell, Merlin, and Odin, the first few bans here for eUnited. So they move over to that Odin pick, and PK decide to ban the Uller for themselves and the Camazotz. So Scary going to have to go with something a little bit different this time around. That leaves eUnited with the Horus open, and that's been a pick for Genetics that, with the way that they play the map, makes a whole lot of sense. And I'd be pretty floored if they go with something different. Looks like eUnited is thinking along those lines. Look, you're going to pick the god that makes you do the thing better than anybody else. Horus lets you do things that no other god can do, and that seems to be Genetics and eUnited's strength as of late, is thinking creatively about how to use this map.
And creative is the correct word, because usually when you see Horus, it's a very pick-focused god. He's got very high single-target CC, but when eUnited picks Horus, it's almost conflict-adverse. They're looking to just maneuver around the map and get objectives consistently, and it almost seems like they're never willing to take a fight, which is pretty evident in what we saw last game. They weren't quite able to win 5v5s, but they were able to move around. Now they're going to be able to have a more standard mage out of mid from Hurriwind, or even another hunter. They won't have to commit that resource of mobility to the mid laner. Maybe we see a little bit more combat-centric focus from eUnited, or we could see them pick something incredibly objective-focused, like a Merlin in mid. Get some more Fafnir in your support role, or not your support role, your solo role, so that you can just continue burning down objectives and using To the Skies to reposition around the map. But I like what PK does here. They pick up the Thor. That's a semi-global ultimate that's going to be able to match a little bit of the mobility that Horus brings.
Makes some sense for Qvo there for sure. One of his old signatures. On top of that is Poseidon locked in. Think normally that's for the mid lane, but with the way that eUnited's been playing as of late, feels like that's most likely for Scream in the jungle, and Ho Yi almost certainly there for Snoopy in that long lane. Poseidon is one of those gods that really is focused more towards objectives these days, in my mind. Has great follow-up off of Horus CC, anything like Athena Taunt. That's an old classic Athena Poseidon to lock down frontliners and cripple them. Works the same way with Horus, just a little bit more single target. And then you've got that great objective secure coming from that Kraken after the fact. Just a matter of where eUnited wants to put it, whether it's in mid or jungle.
And I vastly prefer Scream on this Poseidon if we're going to assume it's going there. This is one of the most mechanically talented players in the league. You might as well put him on a god that's going to be able to carry the game, be able to deal great amounts of damage, move around the map very quickly with that tide meter. He's going to be able to just continually aggress, whereas last game we saw him playing that Nike. Yes, he did very relevant damage, especially considering the build he went, but he wasn't quite able to 100-0 targets. We see him diving onto the enemies consistently, and they make it out with 10% HP, 15% HP. That's got to be frustrating. now he can bring that team fight focus with the Kraken, with the Whirlpool, but he can also match that pace that United is known for in the objective burn, because Trident has some of the best objective burn in any mage.
Pretty hard to match it, for sure, especially if you get a Frenzy or something like that to try and just boost it a little bit even further up. Could be double Hunter composition again for United, something to watch out for, as PK is thinking along those lines, but more magical. They go with Olorun as the band and Variety Sobek, which should be a surprise to nobody who watched game number 1. United looking more towards team fight for Scary than the Camazotz. They ban away that Amaterasu, which is starting to gain some popularity. Yarkor had such a great set on that a week or two ago that a lot of teams are starting to put a little bit more respect on this god. And now the Osiris as well. So they split the difference in terms of late game, early game in their bans. I mean, eUnited, I think that they have to find a way to pick gods around this Horus that are going to lend themselves to the team fight, because you said it after game number 1. They do all these things that are really good and really cute. You know, they get their objectives, they play the map really well, but at some point to win a SMITE game, you have to be able to win 5-on-5s consistently. And I just don't feel like we've seen that yet from eUnited with Genetics at the helm. Feel like they need to pick gods that are going to lend themselves to that, and Tier for Variety is going to be the very beginning. It's the same sort of style as Sobek, just a little bit harder to execute.
I like the Tier pickup. It is an initiation-focused god, but he's got a lot more displacement potential. That knockup lasts a lot longer than Sobek's Pluck does. His damage output is a lot higher, and he's got the ultimate to jump over walls. That's all really good. This Ra pickup is going to help them out on these objectives as well. Out-of-combat healing is going to be very important. But eUnited left King Arthur open. That's going to be a very good pickup here. It's going to be able to cripple out the Tier if they do elect to go for it. So I'm interested to see where PK is going to go.
Yeah, the Ra, we haven't seen it yet so far this season, did just get a buff and now provides power in that Solar Blessing. And I think that when you think of Ra these days, yes, healing should be on the table, but think of him as an objective character. Great secure and really lends itself to burning objectives with that extra power that it provides to the whole team. So I think United is, again, objective-focused, but maybe a little bit could struggle when it comes to doing these actual 5-on-5 team fights, whereas PK looks like they have drafted exclusively for Dive and the ability to win these 5-on-5 fights. That's what it looks like to me.
Vamana's going to have free reign of eUnited's backline. If Huyi's jumps down, pop that ultimate, Colossal Fury, walk him down. If Ra even shows his face in front of you, Colossal Fury, walk him down. These are immobile gods that are going to have a very hard time escaping at any point. It's really on whether or not this Poseidon's going to be able to burst down the Vamana. If he goes into the Colossal Fury, the entirety of eUnited is going to have to turn around and blow him up instantly.
I mean, I feel like PK is just ready to take these brawls, but can they lock eUnited down is the main question. They've been a slippery team so far this season. We'll see if they can find their way to force a Game 3, starting right now.
Have they fully recovered, though, after that 59-minute loss they took in Game 1? That's going to be the question. Still Finch and Gormizer here as he move into Game number 2. Genetics back on the Horus that he impressed with in his debut. Scream piloting the Poseidon in the jungle this time as opposed to the Nike that we saw last time. But what about this Ra? There's a lot to talk about here, Gore, as now you'll see teams fighting around that healing a little bit more offensively. Well, what's the big headline for you?
Honestly, it is, well, maybe the Ra, maybe the Poseidon, but much like Mifflin was saying at the end, it's the lack of mobility on eUnited. They have a lot in terms of Genetics ult. They can still kind of make some similar plays like they did last game. But man, if Thor decides that you are to be dead, or if Scary D decides that you're just going to be out of this fight, you don't really have a lot of room to argue with them outside of just bursting them down. Kraken's going to be able to bring that. Hurriwind can bring that with his ult. I don't know if it's going to be enough.
It's going to be difficult for him, right, to try and prevent that from happening. I mean, I understand that they've got this composition that's going to be relying on Genetics to move around the map quickly, but I wonder when they're already at the place where the fight's happening, how well will they have that mobility? Good bounce there from Snoopy, brings NeilMah low, but they should be safe from here. It's a question of, I mean, Vamana's pretty unpeelable as is, but Variety, I mean, not Variety, but Tier and Horus aren't exactly peel gods either, right? So what little help there could have been, there's even less of. Hurriwind and Scream and Snoopy are all going to have to make sure they're positioning almost perfectly, I think, to get away from this comp.
And a lot of it for Scream is going to be the lead he can get in ganks like this.
Good Whirlpool into the stun. That's an easy first blood there for eUnited. I mean, without the Knights knowing that they're there, they should get that kill almost 100% of the time. Nice work to be able to lock down Neil, who obviously doesn't have beats.
And I think keep your eyes on Scream more than anything. Ganks like that will help lock down Paul. They can help lock down Neil. They can help lock down Zap. Knights have a very safe lineup pretty much from top to bottom, and so you have to have that element of surprise and that burst that comes through with this Poseidon to help make sure things can kind of maintain it. A couple of them have their own forms of self-sustain, or we might see some lifesteal come through to help keep them alive, but there's a lot of disengage on the Knights that help them stay away from where eUnited want to get in there and fight.
Yeah, I wonder how often will eUnited get to be the initiators here in this set, Gormizer. That's what happened that went so well for them in that fight, right? That they started on their own terms. Now some defensive warding from the Knights. That probably won't be happening again. But it just goes to show that when they can kind of execute the fight the way that they want to, this composition could certainly work, right? I mean, the Kraken can blow up just about anyone, particularly Neil, if he tries to leap in, and obviously you could fight around Hurriwind. It's just a question of if they're going to get many more fights like that, or if it's going to be the Knights' show for the most part.
A lot will be determined, I think, based on the level 5 tick, and there is just a little bit of a lead for Scream. He hit 4 before Qvo, so he'll have that ult faster.
That's so unfortunate. Genetics tries to give Snoopy the heal, but really they both group up for the flop is all that really ends up happening. It's not enough for any kill, nor are there any beads usage, it looks like, on the back of that from the Knights as a result of that pressure. So it just basically gets them exactly this, a little bit of pressure and light.
Well, you know, at least from earlier, the Zapman's beads are down if you are eUnited. And so you can maybe try to play around that, see exactly where Scream can rotate, but it's going to be so fast back up in this case that there's not a lot of room for maneuverability. So again, it is going to be where can that Kraken come through, or if you're the Knights, where can Qvo find a really solid dunk that will absolutely solidify yourselves? And it also depends on who you want to get ahead. I think if you get Scary D unleashed in this game, well, that's just bad news bears for everybody on eUnited. You have to use so much to get away from him, or so much to try and lock him down and maybe play catch-up, that might be the best avenue to just solidify this game a little bit faster than the 60 minutes we saw through the first one.
That's right. I mean, you talked about Scary D and maybe trying to mitigate him some. And we talked about him a lot in that last game, if you can parse all 59 minutes of analysis that we tried to provide. But, like, Scary D, I don't know that his impact was quite as impressive as we were thinking it was going to be heading into that game. I think that this time, though, there's even more pressure on him. I know he's on less of a priority pick with the Vamana than the Camazotz, but I think that his dive potential is really going to be critical to their success here for the Knights if they want to close this one in 2 and not get dragged into a third game. Just about everyone is going to struggle with evading this Vamana when he's in Colossal Fury, but it's happening the other direction. They're gobbling him up with a gank on the right-hand side.
Well, I thought it was going to be immediately at level 5, but at least it was still oriented around that ultimate. Scream making the rotation before we've seen a dunk out of Qvo. And this is just the difference in playstyle we've seen from eUnited and the Knights. Knights, specifically Qvo, they've been more farm-oriented early on. They just want to get those buffs. They want to make sure the waves are going well. You don't see Qvo hitting level 5, leveling up, and then slamming down on somebody in lane, whereas Scream is looking for those picks. I mean, he's hungry for it right now, and once that Kraken comes off cooldown, you can expect to see him in another lane looking to make a similar play.
And in Season 7, these ganks are so risky. I think that's why you don't see as many of them anymore. Sam for soccer, not in this game, obviously, but does a lot of those early game ganks himself. But these have been very calculated from Scream. He's found the timings. He's known that they don't have vision, that the ganks aren't going to be red. It's on the back of very, very high percentage ganks is when he's showing up, as QvoFred narrowly evades trouble, takes to the sky with that Anvil of Dawn. He got a searing pain on the way, so he's going to have to find his way back and retreat. Nice work from Hurriwind to make sure there was no reinitiation there, and eUnited still hold on to their early aggression.
And in a way, you burn what I would argue are the two bigger ults for the Knights that are going to cause you the most distress at any point in the game. Scary D, maybe it's not as important, but Anvil of Dawn being down means that you have some Qvo-less stress for a little while, unless some big rotation comes down from the Knights and he finds a massive wall cutting you off. You don't have to worry about the dunk, so your beads are safe for a little bit longer.
Snoopy trying to run Zapman down, dropping the Suns. A little bit of ult for ult trade on the left-hand side, so not much big happening there. Variety currently on the proxy farm tip, and I don't think anyone's going to be coming over there to try and stop him. Tier at all points of the game. Once he's got Lawbringer online, can be hard to stop. Now they can rotate over into the jungle. Kraken to lock NeilMah down inside the Whirlpool, and the CC chain completed by Variety that starts at the proxy and the aggressive positioning from Scream.
And you have to start looking down at the experience and the gold, because those are going to be the things that make a big difference. But right now, Snoopy is still under duress. I thought he was out.
QvoFred making ganks happening on the other side of the map, responding, I think, to some of this extra pressure there from Scream. I like that from Hurriwind. He drops the low cooldown ultimate just to make sure that their buffs can't get invaded, and then he dips out of there. But they really needed that kill from QvoFred. That was well timed.
I mean, you need something in retaliation. One, if you're Qvo, because you have to play catch-up now. I mean, 2-0-1 for Scream. You're down 2 levels. It's not a comfortable spot to be in as a jungler. It's very similar to the conversation we actually started with, if you can remember that long ago, at the beginning of last game. But that experience deficit is starting to showcase everywhere. Zapman's realistically the only one who has a lead right now, and that's going to cause some trouble for him. eUnited, this team, if it can stay ahead, stay aggressive, and keep you falling back, it's going to do nothing but well. But if it falls behind, that's where the Knights find their avenue to go through. They don't want this to be another 60-minute game. I'm sure the Knights don't either. But it definitely, long form, favors the Knights, because it becomes a lot easier for Scary D to just choose someone in the backline, or to Kraken, or to Beads, and then Aegis to get away from Scream, because you'll have both relics at 25 minutes versus now, where you're still susceptible to that Kraken every time he shows up.
It looks like we are going to be seeing the movement speed tier build from Variety that's become so popular here lately. The Talaria into the Relic Dagger right away. But he's not the only one that's trying to zoom around the map. eUnited not just reliant on Horus ultimates to get there quickly. Double Doom Orb plus the Traveler's Shoes for Scream. So he's zooming around. Plus, obviously, Hurriwind has the Raw passive to give him a little bit extra movement speed. The boots down there for Genetics as well. It's quite a lot of movement speed. They'll be roaming around the map pretty quickly.
Well, hey, what did they do better than Knights last game? It was their rotations. Granted, you had Hurriwind dropping portals left and right for everybody, but move speed is going to be the next best thing to the portal to get you over there and open that avenue for your team to be in the right position.
Well, this is exactly what Scream wants. You stuck in a narrow alcove. They get the ultimate out from Scary D, really just off... This is for F-Dot and for aggro, off the threat of activation, right, of the Kraken potentially happening over there, and it's enough that Scary D has to use the ultimate. Now he still has Kraken for Qvo, who had beads, luckily, that allows him to avoid the knockup and retreat, but that's definitely a win for Scream.
Man, I forgot how fast a speed buff Poseidon, now you know you add in Doom Orb with it, but then you pop the Trident, like he is going to be everywhere on this map. And
yeah,
so the
third person on him?
Ever constant.
When the fight...
he zooms.
We'll be able to see that movement speed once this is done. We got to follow the action, though. Hurriwind gets the kill on the Neil. Zapman responds with one on Genetics, and Hurriwind should fall, too. It's a double kill for Zap, who has a big lead over Snoopy. I didn't see that materialize, but he's level 11 at 2-0-1, and Snoopy's walking into the killing field. I don't think he recognized there'd be that much trouble. Paul is disengaging on the right-hand side to make it back out of there, but the Knights find a huge, huge fight.
Yeah, I expect to see Scream very rarely matched up. I mean, Qvo has a semi-global ultimate, and that's still just maybe barely matching how often you'll be able to see Scream running around this map. And it's just the build they're going for. It works out well for Variety, because now, yes, you're not only moving fast, but you get your blink up a little faster. For Scream, you can be everywhere you need to be. It's almost like they want to play the exact same style of game they had last time, just without the Janus. They don't have the portals, so they're like, how can we circumvent that? What's the best way to run from Gold Fury to Fire Giant and still make it in a reasonable amount of time that you could fight in both with full force? And I mean, this is a good way to do it. I'm curious what the maybe lack of power, granted made up for by the Doom Orb, is going to do, though, late game. Because it could shake them up. It could cause Scream to fall behind.
Scream still hanging out and lurking over here on this left-hand side. Not going to be much more for him. No one is really here nearby them. But you were talking a bit about maybe this pursuit of trying to do the same thing that was going to work in Game 1. And I don't know if that's going to be the call here. I'm with you, Gormizer. Yeah. It's still fairly even in this one, though. So, neither team really needs to panic or anything like that just now. So they got plenty of time to work with, I would say, here for both of these squads. We talked about it last time, right? Does anyone have more of a claim to the late game? We found out the answer was no. It dragged us to a full hour in a pretty even matchup. And in this one, I think we might be looking at a lot of the same. eUnited are definitely going to have the advantage with an objective burn, but the Knights have better potential to get back to that backline and dive them. So I think both these teams happy with this piece.
I also want to raise the question, because we don't get to see a lot of them, but the objective steal is still pretty high for eUnited. I mean, Kraken and Rawbeam, both of those are going to be very potent at taking things away.
Cold Fury now low. In comes the Horus ultimate from Genetics, but he's basically all alone. He does stop them from doing the objective for now, but Snoopy drops his ultimate as well. The Fury in all of this has been leased as Snoopy continues to pressure Neil in left, but it's time for the disengage for everyone except Variety, who's still in the back. Meanwhile, Scary D is still doing some diving of his own, trying to pressure out Scream, Hurry, and Snoopy. Can't quite get to them, though. They make it out of there. Meanwhile, Paul hunting down Variety doesn't have enough damage for that kill, so everyone ends up leaving.
Oh, and that's exactly what Mifflin highlighted on the desk, right? Scary D just ults and chooses someone to not play the game, or maybe a couple of people if he can, and just pushes them back so they can't get aggressive, and has a very effective zone out. But because eUnited managed to stay alive, they had a safe place to retreat to. There's too much pressure over here that the Knights can't make the play they want to, which is this Gold Fury. They want it early, they want to take away the lead that eUnited have. And that door just isn't quite open enough for them to squeeze through yet. They have to find a kill, maybe a pick, or maybe a steal because eUnited won.
United have the Gold Fury now in their sights, but they're not all alone here. The Knights coming in from the top side, force them out. Kraken is the better secure. Not quite sure if Kraken's what did it, but either way, Scary D gets the kill onto Genetics on the backside, and the Knights looking for more blood. Hurriwind now falls. So yeah, you got the Fury, but they end up giving up their mid laner and support, so not sure if it's worth it.
Yeah, you maintain a smidge of a lead if you're eUnited, but that's going to disappear with the pressure on the map that you should be losing without that Raw available to you. Especially knowing that Kraken is down, maybe you can push a Pyromancer if you want to as the Knights, or do what they're doing now. Your jungle is ours now. Blue buff, that's mine. Red buff, that's ours. Or the purple buff over there. They just take a little bit to be able to come through. It does look like Snoopy was able to help confirm some of that for his own team on eUnited, but the Knights, I think, reading the situation pretty well, following up those kills with the best they could.
Still a good fight, though, for the Knights to at least find a couple on the backside. So now they're in a good spot here, Gormizer. Not able to start up the Pyromancer or anything quite like that, so they slow down eUnited's aggression on the left-hand side and now regrouping to maybe see if they can make a play. QvoFred looks like he might be contemplating a gank here in mid. Whenever you see Thor stop moving, I always think the dunk's on its way, but not this time. Maybe they're trying to see if they could start up this Pyromancer instead, because there's really not anyone from eUnited on this side of the map, but not going to be the call. The Knights farm up a bit and just back up.
Well, it's kind of dangerous, and it's a shaky call to make right now, especially once Genetics gets his ult back, once he's available. It's not, again, the same dropship you'll have from Janus, but it's still going to be very potent. It's part of what made eUnited. I think maybe find this extra rotational persona that is their builds right now, that is exactly what they've kind of been drafting around. I think Genetics is going to be able to bring a lot more to the table this game than we saw last game, which is saying something because he was very ever-present throughout them. That ult is going to be crucial in a lot of late-game fights, especially in helping secure.
And even more objectives secured by the ultimate there from Hurriwind. The Pyromancer goes down for eUnited. This is the way that eUnited have played, though. It's part of their map stretching style. I think eUnited would kind of prefer if they didn't have to fight you at all, and they just kind of dance around the map faster and keep stealing away objectives and towers until suddenly they have a big lead. So this is going to be the way that they're happy to play it. I think that's why the Knights are starting to step forward here a bit now. Strip away some of the jungle, try and force some of these confrontations, and not let eUnited take all these objective fights on their terms.
Well, it's weird to think about is actually the Kraken's going to come out in mid. Not going to find much, but Qvo dunks back in return.
Good wall, though, from QvoFred. Has locked down Scream, makes it back to the tower, but Zapman is the one that gets the damage. The Horus ultimate allows for the repositioning, but NeilMah wants to keep up this chase. He goes in for a flop, but Variety has QvoFred in the back, trying to see if he can make it over the wall, but Variety gets the auto to set up the kill. Now Snoopy in some trouble. Scary D with some ability should be able to get it, but Snoopy goes up and over the wall, so Scary D can't find him. It's a 2-for-1 for eUnited.
Ends up paying out exactly what they need, and this is where movement speed can come back in. Granted, you're not going to have the guys that are zooming as fast, but you're still available to rotate back in. That will essentially ward away anyone from the Knights from getting too aggressive, and there's not really much opportunity for them to find anything. No big objectives on the map outside of the Fire Giant. Well, based on the last game, 16 minutes, you're not going for it just yet. Find your farm where you can and look for the retreat. But now you're trying to predict ganks more than anything. And what I was going to say before that fight broke out realistically comes down to the movement speed eUnited have now. And why it's more important than you would think, because if I see someone in mid, there's a timer that I'm just instinctually being able to say before he gets to right or before he gets to left. I know the rotation times. That's messed with right now. Scream is going to be able to be in mid and then in right, or mid then left, much faster than you're typically used to seeing a mage rotate. And that is the threshold where they can maybe put some pressure on the Knights and trip them up, just not knowing where they're going to be when they will be there.
It's eUnited's MO, and they've built for it, they draft for it, everything about moving around the map faster than you can respond to. eUnited's got it here. I mean, you even saw Hurriwind hovering the Janus when they already had the Horus, considering the double drop ship, but they elect for this Ra instead. And I think that he's going to have to show us a bit more value from this Ra, because we already know how impactful the Janus can be. Good damage onto Snoopy, right as the Fury's about to spawn here in 20 seconds.
Something that's not just an ult bot or a secure bot from the Ra would be really nice. You have to be able to play around that better. Right now, he's getting put pressured.
Yeah, Hurriwind's already been brought down to half. He doesn't have any relics, so he's basically out of the fight. Variety trying to pull Scary D back under the tower. A good wall allows for him to escape, though it costs Scary D the ultimate. So that's 2 down. Looks like Neil and Scary both end up dropping their ultimates in that last engagement, but they're back over to the Fury. And I don't really know if anyone from eUnited can make it there in time. It is a long wrap from Variety. He's not even going to try. This Oni belongs to the Knights.
Man, if there had been 0 NeilMahs on the right-hand side of the map, that looked like it was going to be a Fire Giant call from eUnited. They were grouping up for it. Everyone starts rushing over there. And then there's a Bacchus. Just happens to be standing there because they recognize what you did last game. There were a lot of calls where, yeah, you might give up, you know, the play for the Fury because there's something more tantalizing on the map. So I like the read, I think, from the Knights, just to ward away any threat on this right-hand side. Maybe eUnited wouldn't have gone for it, but with Kraken available and the amount of burn they have, that threat is going to be present, especially at 20 minutes into the game. You have to be aware of that, and I think the Knights are wising up to it. They recognize eUnited's kind of shot call strategy right now, and they're beating them to the punch.
Knights, though, do have some leads in a couple spots here, Gore. Over for the experience lead for Zapman as well as for Paul. Pretty substantial, I'd say, here at this point. So that's one more thing to kind of keep in your back pocket there. Carries probably hitting just that bit harder. It looks like in gold pretty even. Zap and Snoopy have like the same build, just mirrored for those two. So maybe just a little bit of experience. Really that only difference is the Knights starting to push a little bit more into the eUnited side of the map, that order side. I wonder if Zap's going to be all right over there as he's starting to get a bit collapsed on, but Scream doesn't want to pull the trigger, trying to bait him in. Good dash. Zap gets back out of there, and everything is still A-okay. No big objectives over here on the left-hand side for a while, though, so all this pressure is mostly just for these invades like we're seeing from Scary. He steals speed, red buff being pressured too as the Knights control Variety but not trying to all-in commit onto a tier.
Well, Scary D wants to get aggressive, and he's going to be going to the backline. That's the big baby, and that is meaning he can choose someone to not play.
NeilMah blinks in right after that. It was just the blink intoxicate, I think, from him to try and set up a further chase. There wasn't much there. Hurriwind, though, hits a good snipe onto both of them, Zapman and Paul. And you can already tell that the Knights don't like those lower HP bars. They start to fall back as Hurriwind finds a big shot.
It's really impressive how fast you getting aggressive can turn to you turning tail and running. And Genetics is going up into the ult. They want to make a play. They're going for the FG pit. That's a Pyro.
Pyro? No, it's fire. They are going to try and make it call an okie doke here. But QvoFred understands what's happening, takes it to the sky with that Anvil of Dawn, and dunks down in the back. Scream gets deleted. What a play from Qvo to stop it. But I also think the call for the FG was a bit curious. Clearly the Knights were nearby and knew what was going on. Hurriwind and Snoopy both fall as well. A 3-for-1 for the Knights. QvoFred is the hero we all deserve.
And there's a tantalizing half-health Fire Giant left for the Knights. Be able to get in. The Knights still going to be able to secure that one, so perfect for them. And Finch, I'm just going to highlight it this way. Genetics, you can travel across the map, and those rotations from eUnited last game were great, but they didn't have a Thor to keep up with them. Thor's semi-global ult can chase you down just as well, and I think Qvo read that situation perfectly for his team. Trades out his life, but that's worth.
Exactly the response the Knights needed. Now we're going to start to see our first real lead of the game start to materialize. The tier 2 tower and this next Phoenix should go down. It's really only Variety up, and this is a lot to try and defend all by himself. Scream now up as well, but they can't get into position with minions here. They're getting tons of extra damage with the backdoor protections removed, and that is it for the mid Phoenix. So now the Knights on the full disengage, but Variety trying to chase a little bit, is trying to catch up to Scary, but even if he gets there, the rest of the Knights are out. Should be safe here at this point. A good fight, but wait a minute, Gore. I think they might want to try and make some kind of re-engagement. NeilMah finds the stun onto Scream, and now they're stuck in this weird in-between. I don't like this nearly as much. The ultimate Kraken does knock up Neil. Hurriwind has the stipend. That's it for the Bacchus.
And I would feel really bad about dumping 2 ults into Neil if it weren't for the fact that Hurriwind's is going to be up in the blink of an eye, and I think Scream's will be up before any real engagements come through. But you still lose a Phoenix in the process. eUnited get some scraps that are left behind, but I like the fact that the Knights are pressing this advantage, this aggression that they have over eUnited, and forcing eUnited to make some difficult calls. You don't go for that Fire Giant if you think you have control of the game. You go for it because you need something to give you an advantage, and this is the kind of play to make it. If you lose that Phoenix, maybe you don't defend in mid, but you press your advantage elsewhere, and at least get a tier 2.
They do find themselves at tier 2 and kind of here for the Fury. 25 seconds is too long to stick around here, so they won't be able to grab that. They're going to have to full disengage and will likely belong to the Knights. And here's the thing about eUnited, man. I think they do make these Galaxy Brain plays, but hold on, there might be more of an engagement happening than I thought. QvoFred has a fight happening in mid, but Scream answers it nicely. Up onto the Tycho drums goes Paul, but it's a good ultimate to get away thanks to Genetics. So eUnited actually managed to fully disengage off the Knights' aggression here in the jungle.
But they use so much just to get away from a fight that they're not going to be able to be here for the next fight. The Primal Furies respawn, so maybe something you can ignore, but the Knights already have a solid lead on you. They still have Fire Giant for a little bit. You don't want to let them have more of an advantage. You need to be here for this engagement.
Got to try and keep things close if you're on the side of eUnited. You can't let this one start to slip away from them. They see that the Primal Fury is down low. Genetics trying to stick around for it. This is not a huge deal. I don't know if you want to lose a whole bunch of lives over it, but eUnited are certainly trying to delay. The Primal Fury gets secured by the Knights, so the fight starts to kick off more, and Scream needs some help. Scary D is sticking on him, and this is the dive we mentioned earlier, but look at the movement speed from Scream. He might be able to evade. It's not quite enough, though, as Scary D catches up to him and finally gets the kill.
But you gotta hit the pause button on that one because Scary D uses everything in his arsenal to chase that Poseidon down. I mean, if he doesn't have his blink, which for the next 120 seconds, he's not going to, Scream gets out of there. And so Scream can maybe play that advantage a little more. Unfortunately caught out there. Snoopy makes a good call to get that tier 2 on right, but I don't know, lacking him in that fight lacked a lot of critical damage for the team and critical information for them, because now eUnited are looking to try and defend a Phoenix, and they only have 3 members alive. Maybe 10 seconds till Genetics comes up, and that's enough to ward off the Knights.
But this is where some of that decision-making from eUnited is a bit confusing. Now, you know, because of this fight around Primal, how set up are they going to be here for this defense? I mean, they've got the right call. The Knights are on a full disengage, not really looking to group up and try and make a push. But I just wonder if they made things harder for themselves than it had to by kind of insisting on that Primal Fury defense. It's not the end of the world by any means, but also when a game is close, you don't want to give away a ton of objectives. So it's a tough situation, and they make the call to try and defend. It doesn't quite work out.
And we're in a vastly different state than we were at 25 minutes in the last game, right? I mean, last game, the punches are going back and forth. The Knights are arguably maybe in more control. They definitely have had the lead the entire time. But it's felt like it's just slipping constantly out of the hands of eUnited. They haven't been able to get a firm grip on any of the team fights. They have the burst damage. And if you make a misstep as the Knights, you are all wiped. But they haven't been making it. Scary D gets up in zones. If you get past him, Qvo's finding a good dunk to make sure that you can't dive the backline. If I'm Scream, if I'm Hurriwind, if I'm Snoopy, I'm just constantly under stress. Someone is always stopping me from getting in and doing the damage I need to do for my team. And, you know, what are they paying for it? NeilMah? That's fine. Trade your support for those kills all day. He's 1-5 so that Zapman can be 4-0-6. His hands look like that so his hands can look like this, and Zap is happy with it.
Yeah, you hope you have someone to plunge their hands in the filth so yours can stay clean, and QvoFred is happy to clean up. They've already gotten 2. Scary D finds a double. Now it's just Genetics and Variety that are left, but what can they do when a big baby finds a triple? Make it a quadra kill as Scary D pops off at the end of the game. The Knights put this one to bed. Say goodbye to eUnited.
I mean, there's so many different avenues to talk about, but I'm going to go down the one that makes sense for Scary D. Where's the anti-heal on the other side? There's no Cursed Ankh. You have a Divine Ruin, but there's not enough to shut him down. That big baby form keeps him regened, keeps him going strong.
That'll be it. The Pittsburgh Knights are defending champs, getting it all together here up against a resurging eUnited roster that's been looking great of late, but not good enough to seal up this win. I think what we really saw was the big difference maker there. It's sort of like what they said in the desk. All those tricks are nice, but you got to be able to win those heads-up fights, and I don't think eUnited were able to.
And a lot of it, I think Aggro highlighted as 5v5s. Where are they coming down? And they just never were able to get into that position, mainly because of the way Scary D played. I mean, Quadra Kill kind of spells it out for you. He got into the backline and did what Mifflin had said at the very beginning, which was just stop anyone from doing anything. Scream couldn't be a part of the fight. Hurriwind couldn't be a part of the fight. And they couldn't get away either.
I'm gonna go ahead and say, can we call eUnited the Jimmy Neutron team? They've got the big IQ plays, but it never works out for them either of the time. What about you guys on the desk? You like that nickname for them?
Not bad. Not bad. The brain blast fizzles this time, though, and eUnited don't get a chance to keep the set going. They lose 2-0 to the defending champions. And Miff, I mean, it's exactly like we talked about. In my mind, they've got this great opportunity to burn objectives. They've got phenomenal secure. They've got Ra, who's now really good at doing objectives. And it's just PK. They get a little bit wise to the game plan. That whole game really went towards PK's way when QvoFred and Scary D saw Genetics Horus ult to Fire Giant coming from a mile away.
You can't get away with it that often. Your strategy's been blown wide open the first time Genetics did it. You can't do it 2 weeks in a row, especially if you're going to ult right in front of them and then walk over to the Fire Giant. Immediately we saw Qvo was already ready for it, having not even seen it. He was positioned around Fire to immediately get that Thor dunk. I mean, you can't just announce that you're going to rob a house. You have to do it secretly. eUnited look a little bit one-trick in their strategy this week.
Yeah, a little bit one-dimensional so far, but that's to be expected when you've got the new member, right? You get one strat working for you, and then you have to start to get working towards the next one. I think that teams are ready for eUnited's next development, and that's where we have to see them go. But it's not like they were completely without good plays in this game. The early game went very well for them. I thought Scream was all over the map, doing an awful lot on one of his picks that he's really gone to quite a bit recently in this Poseidon. Variety was a bright spot again on this tier. It's not like eUnited had nothing going for them. It's just their trick play that they tried to go for got called easily by PK this time.
Yeah, just one play in the middle of that match completely changed the dynamic. But you are right to point out Scream. He had a fantastic start and then due in no small part to the draft. Horus plus Poseidon means that's a free cripple that he's just going to have to take. Poseidon plus tier, the exact same situation. That's the level of dominance that you can bring when you strategize around your jungle picks. It's just once that 5v5 rolled around, Scary D really didn't have anyone that could truly challenge him. Finds a triple kill in the late game, finds the dub. What are you going to do about that?
Not a whole lot when you've got Ra and Poseidon against Vamana. Scary picking up that quadra kill at the very end was absolutely huge. I mean, a lot of the talk pregame was about how consistent he has been, which has been a problem for Scary in his career, was consistency. No one ever doubted the high end of what he was going to bring, but how consistently could you see him do it? I think that him returning to LAN form, quote-unquote, Scary D, on a regular basis is a great start for a great season for PK. Now, it hasn't been that way in the standings quite yet, but working their way up now as they have now tied eUnited, I believe both sitting at 3-4 after today's set, going the defending world champions' way. Qvo stole Scary's Penta there for what it's worth, the very first kill of that engagement. How are you supposed to know when it's the first kill? But he did, either way. I don't know, Miff. I mean, is this the type of game that can catapult you if you're on PK into a much stronger second half of Phase 1?
I think it's definitely a great morale boost. I mean, eUnited is a team that's seen a lot of success recently, especially with the addition of genetics. So you know that they're an absolutely strong squad. Taking a dub when you have such a rough start to the season as well has got to be huge for their mentality. And it's been a consistent upswing since that rough start for PK. That's got to be a good place to sit. You expect to see improvement, and that's what we've seen consistently from the squad. I like everything that I'm seeing from the PK boys. Qvo starting to fit in incredibly well with this roster. Paul has been the recipient of 4 or 5 banned out target bans on every draft phase, but he's still seeing consistent success as well. These guys are playing incredibly well.
And PK jumps from tied for number 6 overall in the league to now in that 4th place position with this victory, tied with the United, but obviously that tiebreaker goes to PK with them having just swept the set here today. That does bring us to Space Station up against Rival, which is going to be our next set. And Space Station also sitting at 3-3 with a loss would end up tying for that 4th place slot. With a win would jump up and hold that alone. So we'll see what's going to happen there. But first we got to talk to one of the winners of today's set. We've got world champion Steven Zappas standing by with Finch.
That is absolutely right. We got the hunter here for the night. Zapman, how are you doing? I got to ask you, you all are no stranger to long games. Last year, I said all the time, you're one of the most patient teams in the league. But how was that hour-long first game for you guys?
It was definitely a struggle. We had a couple misplays, a lot of bad calls. For instance, my end call, when we killed 2 of them, and we should have just did fire, but I called to end. Other than that, we're used to the long games. We had a lot of long sets at Worlds. We had a lot of long sets in last year, so it's nothing too big of a deal for us.
No, I think it's part of your identity. You guys really trust your base defense, I've always said, so I think that's strong for you guys. Well, how is the team really starting to mesh here in the middle of this season? Because it's starting to feel like you all are coming into your own. Do you feel like you finally got that new identity worked out, or there's still a bit more to go for the squad?
Yeah, usually the beginning of the season is the experimental phase. It's like teams are trying to figure out their play style. You got eUnited doing a bunch of like cool map plays. You got some teams picking full smork, full pressure, and you got other teams trying to figure out maybe a more balanced approach. As the season, gets longer and longer, teams are going to figure that out more. They're going to play a lot more disciplined, a lot more cleaner, and you're going to see, I would think, teams kind of separate themselves as the year goes on.
Well, Variety had a really good set this time, especially on that Sobek in Game 1, but Scary did not seem deterred to me at all. He had a really great Game 2, and for what it's worth, I think he had a great Game 1 too, just maybe a little bit overshadowed by it. What does it mean for you all that we're starting to see Scary D perform at this level so consistently now?
Yeah, I think for the side lanes, it's really a whole team effort to really get the side lanes ahead. If you saw Game 2, I was super ahead of Snoopy, but that was because Fred gave me a nice gank. Right, and then Scary D fell a little bit behind because he got ganked. So the side lanes are very dependent on your team. Your team enables the side laners to do a lot of things. So I think a lot of the times, maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, Scary D was the sacrificial lamb on our team, so he really didn't shine like the rest of us. But now we kind of have more of an even approach. We kind of play both sides depending. We're a little bit more dynamic in that sense, and that's why you see Scary D shining a lot more than he did before. And he's a beast, and we always knew he was a beast, and we're just giving him the opportunity to do his thing.
It was in him all along, but now we're getting a chance to see it. Always great to get a chance to talk to you, Zap. Thanks for taking some time. Congrats on the win, and we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, though. Another big set about to start.
Thank you.